Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Innovators Livecast series. If we haven't met before, my name is Sydney Kaplan, and I am the content and community lead here at Brand Innovators. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Women in Marketing Livecast. So today is going to be really special, and I'm super thrilled to kick off this event. We've got a phenomenal agenda today and an awesome lineup of marketers. So before we get started, we'd like to thank all of the marketers, sponsors, and every audience member for helping make this event possible. Throughout the event, you're going to be able to use the Q&A widget and the chat widget at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to engage with our speakers and our attendees using the widgets throughout the program. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our first session of the day, Rose Russo, Director, Media and Digital Marketing, Beer Division from Constellation Brands. And her session is going to be moderated by Allison Lambroza, Head of Media Sales, Travel and Growth from Tripadvisor. Welcome, both of you.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to kick off today. Low pressure. We got this. So thank you for the introduction, Sydney. As she mentioned, my name is Allison Lambroza. I'm the head of advertising sales at Tripadvisor. I oversee our brand partnerships team. I'm sure many of you have used Tripadvisor before for your personal travel and dining decisions, but we are the largest platform for travel guidance. My role is connecting brands with our high intent audience in unique ways, rooted in data from everything to custom solutions. I've had the pleasure to meet with Rose this week prior to Livecast today. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Rose has a really incredible background, has worked on some of mine, and I'm sure some of your most beloved brands. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Rose to kick us off, as I know we'd all love to hear a bit more about her background and her career journey to get us started today.
Thanks. Yeah, hi guys. So I can give you a quick kind of career journey, if you will. So I've worked in media / marketing my entire career. As soon as I graduated college, I moved to Los Angeles and started agency side on the media department at Universal McCann, with what I can still say to this day was a dream team of colleagues and clients. My client was Sony Pictures, and I'll never regret starting agency side. I kind of still to this day call it like career boot camp in the best way. But I knew pretty quickly that I wanted a seat at the strategy table a lot farther upstream than I thought agency life could get me. So after about 2 years, I actually ended up going client side to work at Sony Pictures, and I just felt like that was where I hit my stride. So I stayed there for about 5 years. I helped kind of build out a new digital analytics team. I got to work on so many fun movies and a few stinkers. And I was also there during the infamous Sony Pictures hack by North Korea, with my computer being kind of ground zero in the department that morning. So lots of fun stories there. And, I loved the company, and the team really became like a family, and I learned so much there, but I just kind of felt in my gut that it was time to explore something different at a new company, and it just was time to leave. So I ended up going over to Netflix, and I stayed there for 3 years, and I sort of still call it like what I think is the golden years of Netflix. It was kind of the beginning. It felt like the Wild Wild West. It didn't really seem like you had a lot of people to answer to. They really trusted you as employees to be an adult, take risks, really lean in where you wanted and fight for things that you were passionate about. And so it was great. I, again, learned so much there, and I worked on all aspects of media versus just digital. So I was able to kind of expand that skill set too. And then after that, I rounded out my career in entertainment with a short stint at Stars. And I worked on the international media department there, kind of helping build a team and also launch Stars as a streaming platform in countries outside of the US. So another great kind of experience and skill set I was able to get there. So I left LA about 3.5 years ago, and now I'm in Chicago working at Constellation Brands in the beer division. And started here, when I started, the digital and traditional media teams were separate. So I started on digital, working on Casa Modelo and Corona family of brands. And then about 1.5 years ago, we merged together, became one team. And now I just work on the Corona family of brands. So that's a short, quick journey how I got here.
No, that's great. And I'm sure we 100% can unpack many of those stops along the way. One of the biggest things I saw is, you've had a decade in entertainment. and you really have pivoted to beverages in the beer category. What made you decide to get out of the entertainment world and into this category?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I just got burned out. It's
Honesty is good here.
Yeah, I got burned out. I mean, it's a really bizarre world, Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. I obviously loved it. I stayed for 10 years, but like everything is a fire drill and everything is so sensitive because you've got filmmakers and actors to answer to, and who are also sensitive. And to be honest, I worked nonstop 24/7. It felt like for the first probably 8 years of my career. And when I got to Stars, I kind of got this little taste of work-life balance that I just realized I wanted more of. And I think sometimes as women, it's hard to admit that because maybe it makes you seem weak if career isn't your everything, but that's not true. And, you're able to like thrive in both life and work. And then there was the Harvey Weinstein scandal and Me Too movement, which just kind of pushed me over the edge. I think it was hard to ignore that side of Hollywood anymore. So anyway, all of that combined to just really wanting a change. And the one thing I did know is that I still wanted to work on a big, beloved brand, already beloved, that had the scale, aka budget, to continue building like really fun campaigns and really be a driving part of culture versus just kind of fitting into culture. Which I think Corona is that brand. And so it's been great. And Corona was actually my first sip of beer as a kid. So kind of stars aligned. But yeah.
Perfect. Full circle.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's really interesting. And I think you hit on a lot of points that resonate with a lot of people in terms of being able to just acknowledge the separation of work and life and being able to integrate and balance between the two. So, all right, big brand, big budget, you mentioned. I think the most obvious question as we're talking about like women in marketing is the overarching theme is that there are a handful of categories that are still traditionally male dominated in their marketing efforts. So beer being one of them. So one of the most like obvious questions is how do you think about like diversifying outside of beer? And are you currently having like a female effort that you're working on?
Yeah. I think there's a couple kind of areas to talk through here. I think in my career experience, marketing and specifically media has really been very female heavy. So under the C-suite. So I've always felt really good about that. But, when it came to the beer industry, I noticed as a whole, it's an industry built by men and families of men and therefore leadership. And so there's a lot of layers there that companies are continuing to push against and make diversity improvements on. And I've, been here 3 years now in this industry and I've seen it, right? Like there's women leaders in a lot of places that maybe hadn't been before. So, I think like we've made huge strides, I can tell, and there's also a long way to go. And I think that's okay. Like both can be true at the same time. Big changes don't happen overnight as long as you're kind of progressively moving in the right direction. But to specifically answer your question around messaging to women, we absolutely do. And how much we do and what that break is really just depends on the brand itself. I work on Corona family of brands and there's 5 sub brands under them. Corona Premier, I think, is a great example that has really pivoted to be inclusive of all genders. Golf, for example, is a big pillar of ours. And I think pre-pandemic, golf was very much a male sport. The women and wives of golfers were kind of almost like butts of jokes and stuff. But post-pandemic, the sport itself blew up and women are a huge part of that now. And I think we quickly pivoted and we're really inclusive. So that's a proud brand that and programming that I love to work on. Extra is the same. Like we've really embraced a lot more women ambassadors. A lot of our content creators and influencers that we work with are really in that female space, specifically bicultural females. And then Refresca, amazing campaign launch last year. If you guys haven't seen it, it's called Let Flavor Reign. And the team did such a good job building that out. And it really focuses on Black and Latina queens and flavor queens. So there's definitely areas where females are a bigger part. And then there's areas where we still have some improvements to make with our programming. But overall, yes, we absolutely focus on women.
No, I mean, I think that's great to hear. And we're seeing that shift. And I think there's been, I'm sure you've done a lot of it on your own, reams of research about the power of the female, purchaser. Do you think that's being understood from the top down in terms of where they're allocating efforts and, like we said before, some of the stereotypical ways in which we tend to see certain categories focus their budgets?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. And I thought about this a lot. I don't think it's that people don't understand women and their purchasing power, but I just think that for big beer brands, like then 21 to 49 is just, it's a really safe space. I sometimes call it low hanging fruit, but they contribute such a massive piece of volume to our business that of course it makes sense for us to kind of start there, saturate that demo, and then expand beyond to what some might see as maybe a less safe space because we haven't really been there before. Sometimes it's funny. I see some beer tropes sneak into other brands and out there, and beer is for men. Men are bros. Bros love drinking beer and yelling at their TVs while drinking beer, and that's not that common anymore. It is funny when you see it, and there's a place for that too, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely not as common. And one thing I was remembering is before I was in the industry, this was a long time ago, Coors did such a great campaign around the official beer of. And they really kind of broke that mold from how women showed up in beer commercials. Women used to kind of be side candy and just kind of there in the background. And they featured a woman front and center coming home from work after a long day. The first thing she did was take her bra off and grab a Coors and then sit on the couch. And I just remember as a consumer thinking, wow, that's like really different and also so relatable. And so obviously I didn't work there, so I don't know if it quote worked, but to me it did as a consumer.
I'm sure many of us are like, oh yeah, I understand.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So we've come a long way, and I think it's not a novelty, but I think it just takes this conscious effort to sort of remind yourself to keep expanding and find that white space and lean into the power of women.
Yeah,
and their
absolutely.
power.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because you've been there, you said about 3.5 years now, right? So it's such an interesting time of what has occurred and habits that have changed in terms of consumption, trends that have come about. And I know we talked a little bit about the rise, and we could talk about it today as well, as non-alcoholic beverages have become, risingly more popular. So, how have you used your position to really rethink those audiences and messaging over this time frame in your 10 years there?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, right? Like consumption trends have changed, and I think we've all lived through the seltzer boom, which, the seltzers, the light beers, they really leaned into women, this betterment, healthy lifestyle in a way that I think, brands hadn't in the past. So there's actually products being made with women in mind now versus kind of marketing to them later. So that's been a huge change. I think in my position and the team I'm on, obviously I don't control the products we make, but I think for me, my MO is just to continue kind of like a broken record until I get some green lights, and kind of kidding there. But I try to just if I'm passionate about it, I keep talking about it. And then what I've found really helpful across my career is just really rooting a recommendation in 3 things that I found kind of help set myself up for success. And so first, really leading on current stats or behavioral shifts about the audience that you're trying to reach, if it's a new one that you're introducing. Competitive examples and wins are always helpful to see what people say about it and the sentiment behind that. And then positioning it as a test and learn or a first to market opportunity has really helped. And Constellation is a consumer obsessed company, which is so great. But the backdrop of everything we do is really built around drinking occasions. And so it's about kind of finding and leaning into these occasions that maybe are broader, encompassing all demos, or honestly, even uncovering a new drinking occasion. Even if it's niche, it might be worth exploring and testing out. So right now, my focus is a lot on future proofing our business. And I think some may roll their eyes at that, but I think sometimes it's a hard sell, especially when your business is doing so well, which I realize is a great problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think humans can tend to sort of get in this, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, but as marketers, we know you have to stay ahead of those trends so that when they get there, they're not too late. And I think outside of women, Gen Z is one, they're our next drinkers. And so we should absolutely be focusing on them now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I forget what the expression is, but if you don't change, you just stay still, you're not evolving. And what we've seen so much is that things can change so quickly. So getting ahead of that. So, I don't think anyone's rolling their eyes at future proofing. I'm sure everyone is thinking about it themselves. So, I mean, I think those are really actionable advice areas to take away, which I know people a lot of times appreciate. I think we talk in these high levels, but to really boil it down into how can you internalize it and then action on it is really helpful. So I love taking us through that. Can you actually walk through again with like some of the examples, like how have you been championing these efforts for like more inclusive, whether it be age, gender, and where you were successful, maybe where you weren't, because I think some of the times we learn from the areas where we aren't able to push through as well more.
Yeah, for sure. Also lots of examples here, but I think one that really works for, again, the big beer brands is if we think about sports as a category, men's sports drives really consistent, strong live tune-in, which live is like the mecca right now, and the opportunities are few and far between. And if you look at a lot of beer brands, men's sports is truly a cornerstone of every either media plan or sponsorship or, big bet. And I think, it makes sense. It's an easy sell in. There's a lot of proof, again, that these tactics drive volume. So we should be there. But I think when you think about expanding to women's sports, like it has to be sort of a conscious decision that you make, and it might be a little scary to some because we haven't been able to prove out like that it drives volume in the way that the other live sports have. So but I think my team has really noticed, and not just my team, but there's so much life in women's sports, and it's grown so much even just in the last few years. A couple of stats that we like to say are 58% of women consider themselves avid or casual fans, so that's a huge base of people that are watching sports as well. And then this is a stat we sent around a few times last year, but the Women's March Madness finale in 2022 was the most watched college basketball game on ESPN, men or women, since 2008. So, I mean, it's just like, you can't really deny that it's just a huge piece right now of culture. And my little pod, the media team here we're all women, and we've kind of taken this on as kind of a passion point and really tried to sell through. And, example where we didn't was Women's March Madness this past year. We saw the rating trends, we saw them, like the social conversation around them. There were standout athletes, all of this, and we wanted to buy in, and we wanted to have a big space there. But ultimately, like, Men's March Madness is such a key tentpole moment for Corona family. And at the time, we'd already planned for it. So for a lot of reasons, like resources just didn't allow it, which made sense. It's not like there wasn't passion for it here, but so that didn't work. But we just kept pushing it in kind of a funny way. We would like randomly send stats to our team and just be like, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see that? And ultimately, like down the line, we ended up selling through a program around All-Star Week. So still getting into women's sports. We had an ambassador, Sue Bird, who was part of the Corona Extra campaign, and we really leaned on her to celebrate her career. She was retiring, and just kind of went out across a few sports lifestyle sites and were able to get in that way. So we're getting there. And then, Corona Premier, another brand, like I said, was super inclusive. Corona is the official cerveza of MLB, and we're building out a whole program for Premier and like women's day out at ballparks. So more to come there. But yeah, there's definitely lots of space, and sometimes you're successful selling in a new age again, sometimes you're not.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you talked about as well when we were chatting, which I think is a really interesting viewpoint, is those areas where you are successful in selling it through, but maybe not as successful or didn't expect the outcomes maybe that you potentially received, and kind of how do you handle that in terms of managing that risk to leave doors from new opportunities open?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think taking a risk, whether you succeed or fail, is always worth it, because you can always learn something from it. And I think, there are times when you have to just take those baby steps, like that I do with sports. And like another one is I've been trying to kind of sell in a new way of thinking of social. And while you can't overhaul something for every single brand in the portfolio, you can take a step back and look at one brand that can be part of the test and learn. So kind of just trying to approach it and find those baby steps. But yeah, I mean, there have been things I've sold through with passion that ultimately failed. Got a few of those. And there are things that I was passionate about not doing, and I just didn't speak up enough. And I think that's also an interesting space to learn from. I do have kind of an example of that one that sticks with me from Netflix. I remember very vividly, we were launching season 2 of The Crown, which coincided perfectly with the election results, the Trump versus Hillary Clinton election. Very heated election. Everyone remembers it.
Bringing back memories, yes.
I know. But yeah, so I remember distinctly, we were sitting in this room, like cross-functional team, and we were having a risk assessment of a creative execution that we were going to run. So the idea was you're going to buy a full page wrap of the New York Times, and it was just going to be a beautiful picture of the Queen, and the tagline, which took up most of the space, was "Her reign begins." So obviously a nod to Hillary winning and a nod to the season, which covered the Queen ascending the throne for the first time. So in this room, like everyone was caught up in the genius of this idea, which it was. I mean, it's a perfect moment that you can't, create yourself. But the risk conversation was a lot about like, the risk is super low because of course Hillary's going to win. Like, have you seen the polls? Have you seen the odds? People were quoting stats and this and that, and this is a slam dunk. And I just remember sitting there and finally, like, I raised my hand. I felt really uncomfortable doing it. But it's like, I don't think this is a slam dunk. And I said, I honestly think Trump is going to win this election. Oh my God, you could have heard a pin drop. It was so uncomfortable. And I was like, okay. So I just stayed quiet. I didn't like further expand on what I meant. And I wasn't like sharing my political beliefs. I just felt like I was in this unique position of living in the LA bubble, but also being very connected to the Texas bubble that I grew up in. So I just I never saw the election as a slam dunk. And anyway, Trump won. We tried to cancel it last minute. A few of them did go out. And it wasn't like a huge controversy. Some people definitely, thought it was distasteful or like, headlines were written about it, but it wasn't a big deal at the end of the day. For me, my big takeaway and learning was that, just speak up, like, especially if you can back what you have with a reason, like you're never going to be wrong in that. And I think you can learn a lot. And now anyone will tell you, I pretty much speak up all the time. But that I just thought was kind of a fun example for when it doesn't go your way.
No, it is. Listen, you have to, I think it's a hard lesson, especially earlier on in our careers, to trust your voice and to say it loudly. And don't apologize when you're saying it or couch it in anything. Be firm about it. I think it's a great example. And you talked a lot about, social and trends. And I know obviously that was probably a huge piece of your life from the entertainment category. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about, if you could talk through a little bit about like the learning curve and how you're trying to change a bit of the model that you're working on right now, not just from a who are we messaging, but how we're messaging.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, the biggest learning curve I think I had when I came to AlcBev was that unlike entertainment, beer is an always on kind of approach to marketing. And there was like one planning cycle, which I just thought, I've never done that. Like one planning cycle for 365 days. I don't get it. But because in entertainment, everything's like a really short window. You've got like 1 to 3 months to get people to tune in. The day of is a big blast. Maybe you talk about it a week after and then you're done and you move on. So a lot is changing and iterating every day because it's such a short window. So I think the biggest thing that I was passionate about when I got here was translating how we thought about digital marketing. Linear is a different story and a lot harder to kind of be flexible with, but digital isn't. And, the big things I focus on are agility, actually creating and amplifying tentpole moments, which hadn't been like a huge piece of the strategy before, and creating new content as they come. Like, we've got obviously our big production shoots for TV, but there's other things along the way and scrappy ways that you can build content and react that you can push against that sort of set it and forget it mindset, even though it, was obviously working, but it's just a different way to think. And then, like you said, consumer behaviors they're changing and they're changing so fast now. And I think, we do that pre-COVID, but then March 2020 was honestly, it was like putting gas on the fire. So we quickly as a company learned the importance of having the resources and the process in place to be able to like pivot, start from scratch, and then continue to iterate as we go. we were trying to market Corona beer in a pandemic named the coronavirus. So agility was key. And, you know, I think that kind of like accelerated us trying to think differently. And again, Constellation as a company is all about learning and growing. And so, you know, it's not a hard sell by any means.
Yeah. And I may be a little bit biased coming from Tripadvisor and the travel category, but I thought one of the examples that you and I talked about was great of just how to take advantage and be mindful of the timing that you're seeing happening, the trends that you're seeing happening, and then be a vocal force internally to let people know, like, this is a moment that we need to take advantage of. If you could take everyone through that one. And I think I also loved it because, like you said, during the pandemic, during the last 3 years, you know, I'll speak from my own experience that travel was challenging. But we've seen a huge turn in the other direction, and especially for your brand, embracing that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's obviously a cross-functional effort, but it's still one that our teams here really love. So kind of building off that concept of, you know, being really agile and being able to capitalize in real time on trends. You know, and we were still getting back on our feet post-COVID pause, all of that. So, you know, we're always looking for ways to showcase that relevancy and timeliness together is really what that sweet spot is. So the summer of 2021, as you said, like travel, you know, it had gone away and it was sort of returning at this time somewhat back to normal. But what we saw was people were just itching to go somewhere, anywhere at this point. And also during that time, you know, it was like the meteoric rise of cryptocurrency in the news and in pop culture. I think it was like right around the time Kim Kardashian and Snoop Dogg all talked about it within 1 week, which is, you know, peak pop culture. So, you know, Corona is a brand that's like the master about chilling on a beach, and we had a relationship with Snoop. So we knew there was something there. So we went to work and pulled together a last minute campaign with Expedia. Sorry, giving away.
We'll chat later.
Yeah. Okay. We did a sweep where we gave away $1 million in a term that we coined cryptocurrency. So that was just a really fun kind of play on words as well. But that translated to 400 people getting about $2,500 in travel credit. So we obviously leaned on Snoop to be kind of the voice of that campaign, and we did PR, TV, everything. Like, it was just a really fun kind of blast for about a week. And it was honestly one of the biggest and most engaged programs we had that year. And not only that, like, just people talking about our brand spiked, the sentiment spiked, like everything that you want to see from a campaign really paid off. So that was a fun one for us.
No, it's awesome. Obviously, I mean, I know so many people, there's so much data around it, but it's like palpable when you're talking to people about like the desire to travel again. Yeah. But even back in 2021, to kind of be ahead, I think, of that curve and to see that type of results, and not that it isn't always on, but as a spot moment that you're identifying, so important. And speaking of some of the trends that we're seeing, I mentioned it before, but there's a lot of, obviously, we're seeing in the news coverage, consumption coverage of the rise of like non-alcoholic beverages. So, you know, I think I read in Forbes that non-alcoholic drink markets have, you know, passed over $10 billion, $11 billion. So significantly up. So curious about your POV in addressing it as a marketer.
Yeah, I mean, research backs it up, but I also believe this too. Like, to me, it's that next big category boom. And to brag about Constellation a little bit, like, we have such a strong, talented innovation team here at Constellation. And so they're always like really good at identifying that next to market opportunity and jumping on it. And so to that point, we are launching a Corona non-alcoholic in March of this year, which is really exciting. But, you know, obviously the numbers you mentioned are really big, but if you look at kind of beer specifically, it's still a small part of overall sales as a category, but it's definitely growing. The drinking occasion and behavior is growing. It's a brand new one that we're all able to lean into. So lots of room to grow here. And, you know, for Corona, within the sub-branded families, we've got a lot, right, to focus on and support. So for non-alc, we're just kind of we're using it as an opportunity to lean back into what I was saying about testing and learning. So different approach, a little bit of different approach to strategy, but going out of the gate first by leaning heavily on like influencers and content creators and sampling and this really kind of grassroots effort so that we can kind of learn who that core consumer is and continue to build and grow from there before we go all in on a media mix. But yeah, we're And lucky us, we have a very iconic brand that kind of helps us on the shelves when people will see it. So it's definitely a category we have our eyes on.
That's great. Well, I'll keep a lookout. March is very soon. I can't even believe how quickly
I know
the year feels to be flying already. And I know we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to circle back to some of the topics that we talked about in the beginning, which is really around, you talked a bit about your team structure and how you as a marketing team are pretty much all women. And I want to leave a few minutes for questions if anybody has as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you support each other to push forward these initiatives when, maybe you're trying to break down barriers, and then just a little bit more about how that dynamic works and the dynamic that you foster for your team that you're managing and cultivating and the voice that you want them to be able to have.
Yeah, for sure. So it is, I gotta say, really fun. And I don't know if everyone would think this is, not what they're expecting, but like across media and brand, the Corona team is majority women. And it's just a fun, bond we have and thing that we can talk about. And so that's obviously been great. But me specifically, like my team, I manage a team of 4 with 2 direct reports. All of us are women. And with my 2 direct reports, I think we just have been able to build a really unique bond right now that's proven successful in a lot of different ways. But I think one thing about it is that we are just we understand each other intuitively in a way that I think is special when you have a team of women. And we have a lot of fun every day. But I think the biggest thing is that there's just a level of transparency, honesty, and grace that we give each other that I haven't experienced sometimes in the past. And I think that sometimes women, it's hard to talk about unless you're at a women in marketing event or unless you're kind of, I don't know, an event session or something. But I think, daily, we're really open about the things that we struggle with and honest about things. And, I've shared with them things I've been through and what I learned from it. I've been told to smile more. I actually got in trouble once for not smiling. And
this made me so angry the other day when we were talking about it.
It still bothers me. But my work never suffered. I was still putting in all of the hours that I ever did. But, it was just a time in my life where I literally couldn't smile. It took too much of my energy. And, I've learned a lot from that about how to show up and when it's okay and when it's not, so lots there to unpack. But, I also going through the entertainment industry, there's this coat of armor sometimes I had to put on going into meetings with certain filmmakers, or I just knew inappropriate comments would come my way. And I think as women, there's just this extra layer of preparedness sometimes you have to have, or honestly, a blank face you have to put up in order to get through it. And again, I say all this not to complain by any means, but it's more just, I can talk about this with my team and then help them, learn if this happens to you, here's how you can address it, or here's how you can kind of turn that into a positive thing. And those lessons that I've translated are really about as women, you go through shit. And so I think honestly, we've really earned this right to be our own advocate, be our internal and own PR hype person, and really feel comfortable broadcasting your accomplishments, talk about your career wins. And the biggest thing that it boils down to, and everything you learn from these moments where you feel less than, or feel you were kind of, disappearing in the room you're in, I think is whatever organization you're in, find your voice and then use it with confidence. And I've made it part of their individual goals to either present more or talk at least once in every cross-functional meeting. Obviously, don't talk just to talk. And then really be proactive with getting your ideas out there. And, someone gave me this advice and I also stick with it. Your goal should be for people to bring your name up in a room and be an advocate for you when you're not there. And I think that just shows that you have that voice that people trust and respond to. So that's kind of things that we're able to talk about that I think is a little bit more of a safer space when you've got a team of women.
Yeah, I think that transparency piece is so key, and just being able to share. And even you and I started doing it the other day, and it's it happened. You're not alone. And I think that's so much about these women in marketing panels are about, and being able to create the connectivity there. So I know we're nearing the end. So if you had to leave us with, I think you've given a lot of really good tangible advice. but if you had to just do one thing, one closer as you're leaving today about a piece of advice looking for women to be a leader in the industry, what would it be?
Oh, one is always so hard.
I know. Well, you've given a lot smattered throughout this, but just one more.
Yeah, of course. No, I think one like short and sweet is like, don't ask for a seat at the table, just take it. And I think that can be a actual table in a room you're in, or that can be a metaphorical table, whatever it is. I think just take it and don't apologize for it. As long as you've got that confidence and you can, back it up, that's okay. Like you shouldn't, that's, I don't know. I think sometimes we're also afraid to just like not overstep or like worry too much about politics. And obviously you've got to keep that in mind and keep your company ethos in mind. But like, if you find yourself having to kind of apologize or shrink yourself back or stop your voice, then that maybe means you're at the wrong company. And I think that's kind of how I've sort of navigated my career. And honestly, it's the thing that's helped me the most.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I appreciate the candor throughout, this entire session. I think it's been a really interesting mix of understanding, the business behind it and the strategies, as well as really understanding like, our own personal ways to be empowered. So I hope everyone feels empowered. I hope everyone is now like me in the mood for a beer. But I did want to leave it open for the last few minutes for any questions for anybody. Let's see if anything will pop up. Okay. We'll give it, we can give it a month. I can also just talk to you continuously.
Yep.
How quickly 40 minutes have just gone by.
So fun. I know, that went fast.
I know. But yeah, this has been incredible. So I will give, I think we're pretty much at time.
Someone dropped a question.
There you go. Oh.
What am I most excited for? I guess personally, I have a lot of fun travel coming up. Part of that work-life balance. Travel is a huge passion of mine, so I try to get a few big trips in every year. And then I think professionally, just continuing to work on this brand and evolve the business. And we have so many fun campaigns coming up that I can't really talk about right now, but it's just a lot of new stuff and a lot of new audiences, and it's a really exciting space to be in right now. So, and then, where do I see myself in 5 years? I hate this question.
The biggie.
Yeah, honestly, I just, I obviously have career goals of continuing to grow both my skill set, raise the ranks in marketing, all of those things. But I think truly it's just continuing to not only live my voice and kind of be confident in that and continue to grow that confidence, but also kind of help others. I think I love kind of this role of mentorship and kind of being a part of the industry and having talks like this. So I think that's also another kind of professional goal of mine, is to kind of expand that industry networking and connections.
It is a hard question, the 5 years, but I think that's, and something that's evolving throughout time. And I think where I love that you just focused it is really about you, not exactly a title or a role or a company. And I think that's the way it's traditionally, sometimes people look at it, and to look a little bit more inward, which is a great role model already.
Someone here gave me, I know we're at time. Someone here, a woman here gave really great advice, and she said, I've heard it a couple times, but she said, chase experiences, not roles. And I think that to me was that's exactly, unknowingly, that's what I was doing, but that is absolutely what I would say has also been a huge driver of my career journey. If I wanted to be a VP by 30 in title alone, I probably would be at a company I don't love in a job I don't love. So it's fine to have those goals too, but I think for me, it's all about the experiences and the people and brands that you work on.
Yeah. What are you prioritizing and why? And I think that's such great advice. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great, fun session, informative, empowering. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you to those who have attended and participated today.
Yes, thank you. It was great. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thank you both. Thank you both so much. Have a great rest of your day. And we so appreciate the time on both of your ends for being here.
Of course. Happy.
Thank you. So Amazing start to the day. Such a great conversation. And thank both Rose and Allison again for being here. So next up, we're going to have one of our best of sessions featuring Stacie Medley, the Director of US Media at Kimberly-Clark. And her session is going to be moderated by Crystal Park, Vice President, Industry and Experiential Marketing, SiriusXM Media. So we're going to pull that up now, and that will start shortly. So on to the next one.
Hey, Stacie.
Hello.
So excited. We're both excited to be here. We're both women in marketing. Like Maddie said, I am Crystal Park. I'm the Vice President of Industry Marketing at SXM Media. We were previously known as Pandora Media, and recently rebranded to really bring together the best of culture driving content across satellite, streaming, and podcast. And this morning or this afternoon, we've heard some great conversations from some leaders in both creative, analytics, and insights. And I have the great pleasure of having Stacie Medley here. She is the Director of US Media at Kimberly-Clark, a role she's been in for a hot, 3 months?
3 months. 3 months, like 2 days ago.
Yeah, which could some days feel like 3 years or 3 days. After spending 20 years on the agency side. So she is a true expert in her field. She's a leader, and what I find fascinating, a mom of 3 boys.
Yes.
And so today we're really going to get into Stacie's background, dive into some meaty conversations around her personal decisions, professional decisions, some career milestones, and even uncomfortable situations she's been in that in total have really gotten her to where she is today. So again, Stacie, welcome. Would love for you to just introduce yourself and go into a little bit of your background before we get started.
Sure, no problem. It's good to see you again. Thank you for that nice introduction. So I'm Stacie Medley. Recently, as Crystal said, joining Kimberly-Clark as the US Media Director. I spent 4 years at the University of Illinois, so a bit of a rival of the last couple of panelists that we just heard from. A bunch of Big Tens here. I have spent 21 years in the media industry, which I have found myself saying quite a bit, and I can't actually believe it's been that long at agencies. And this is my first client-side job, which is super exciting. So I feel like these 3 months have kind of went by in a bit of a blur. It's been a really great experience. I've enjoyed every moment of it, of learning the wonderful brands that Kimberly-Clark has that bring such a need to the communities and to the people who experience them. They're a great company to work for. I've loved all the time that I've spent at the different agencies that I've had a privilege of being a part of. And now I'm happy to be here speaking to all of you and being able to talk about the experiences that I've had agency side. So thank you for having me today.
Yes, definitely. So clearly you've been in the industry for a while. You have experienced and seen firsthand the different evolution, phases of evolution, the many disruptions that our industry has gone through. In your tenure, what do you feel has been the most interesting phase of advertising? But more importantly, how have you reinvented yourself through all that change?
It's funny, when I was thinking about this question, I think it would be easy to answer the last couple of years have probably been the most disruptive. But if I thought back on the time that I've been in this industry, I would have to say hands down, and it's totally going to date me, but digital media, the evolution of that has really, really changed what my job looks like and what I'm expected to bring to the table for my job. So when I think back to my first job out of college, I joined a media department at a full service agency. And my job was so simple. Like, I talked to some of the people that I used to work with, and we joke that some of the hardest decisions we had to make was, do I want to be in cable? Do I want to be in prime? And, maybe I'll add a little bit of print to my plans. And there were times where you would have to go and pull competitive, and you went to the room where everybody shared the computer and the programs were on that computer. And that's where you pulled the reports, and it had to run overnight. And if you made a mistake, you were like so upset the next morning, you might be in tears because you'd have to rerun it. And it could be disastrous. So the evolution of that is incredible. When I went to Mindshare in 2003, I had the privilege of starting to work with their first two digital employees within the media planning department, which today sounds kind of insane, but it's when this was sort of in its infancy and things were just starting. I was actually one of the first supervisors there that was allowed to have a laptop to be able to work in a kind of travel and remote sort of way that was usually reserved for senior level employees, but I commuted. So I needed a laptop to be able to work kind of in a more fluid environment. And I think today we're really lucky that we have kind of the opportunities to have such digital and data opportunities to reach our consumers. I know sometimes it feels like a really complex and fragmented environment, but it has made our job so much more interesting and fascinating. We get to plan in very different ways. We're talking about agility and planning in sprints and looking at in-flight optimizations for sales on a weekly basis. They're things that we just didn't have before and that have made my job much different. I think when I think about reinvention, I'm definitely still a work in progress. And I hope I get to reinvent myself a few more times before my career is over. But I have to think about, the people around me and the skills that they've been able to help me develop. I've been really, really fortunate and I'm thankful for that. I've had people who have pushed me to be better, who have invested in me to develop skills and who have seen potential in me. But I think honestly, I did have to learn along the way, and I've had to be my own advocate at times to help develop my own career path and know what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I had to figure some of that out along the way. I also had to realize that I didn't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room and that there were skills I was going to need to learn to be more marketable. And honestly, I'm not a digital native. You heard me kind of mention that this wasn't part of what I was taught or what I was trained in the beginning. And I had to ask to learn those skills, put myself in positions that would allow me to develop those skills and help me be a better media person in the marketplace and more marketable and more valuable in meetings that I wanted to be in. So I think my reinvention is probably not over. I'll keep doing those things because I think I want to keep growing and I want to learn, and that's where this marketplace is going.
Definitely. I totally am right there with you. I started about 20 years ago myself when like a class in, college was like the internet, right? Obviously through this, evolution on a more human side, how have you been able to stay grounded, both in your younger, at your earlier times in your career and even today? Was there a mentor or a book or even a podcast or a leader that you've really kind of leaned on to, help you stay grounded throughout your career that you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. I would have to say my family grounds me, and you mentioned that I have kids, and I can talk a little bit about that later, but really I have a good extended family. And I recognize we all kind of come from different backgrounds, but I have to acknowledge that the life that my husband and I are able to provide for my kids at this job that I've been privileged to have kind of is a gift for me and for my family and what I'm able to give my kids. But it's really different than what other generations of my family was able to give to my mom or my other extended family. My grandma actually didn't have the same opportunities. She didn't finish high school. She didn't go to college. She didn't have access to the same opportunities that I was given or the choices to pick her own career. I was one of the first in my family to go to a 4-year college. I was one of the first to have a corporate job. So I don't take any of the things that I have for granted. I had to work hard for it. And I feel privileged to be able to do that for my kids. And I try really hard to make them aware of like what the gifts are that they're given, and that it takes hard work to get there. But I am also a mom to 3 boys, and truthfully, they don't really care if I have a presentation to a president or to a CMO. They're very humbling experience when you open the door today and they're out there waiting and they remind you that they need to eat or they have homework and then you have to switch gears. So it's really easy to stay grounded when those are your responsibilities outside of a big presentation or a meeting and the work that you need to do. And I think if the last 2 years have taught me anything, probably like most people, I realize that my biggest job is the one that I have to do here at home.
Definitely. And you clearly are a mentor both at home and as well as in your current role and in your past role on the agency side. Just quickly, what type of advice would you give to any young female, kind of young aspirational student really coming up into the marketing advertising industry? Like what would you give Stacie advice from when she was graduating, from college? What would you tell her today?
So this is super easy for me to say because I think with experience definitely comes perspective. So 21 years in, I think this is so much easier to say, but it is a marathon, not a race. I think you have to take the time to find experiences that matter to you. You have to work for people and at places and for companies that share your values. It probably resonates a lot more with people who are listening after the last couple of years than maybe it ever really has. That you should work for places and people and companies sharing the values, the culture, and people around you matter. It really, really does. It doesn't mean that you don't have to put in the hard work or do the job that you're hired to do, but it does matter if you find people and places that will value the contributions you're going to make to that company. And I would also say this, I think I've learned that I've only been at like 3 or 4 places, I think, in my entire career, which is somewhat of an anomaly, but it is a small industry. This can help you. I think the woman on the previous panel was saying she didn't realize how powerful or impactful her network could be. So this can absolutely help you, or it can hurt you depending on the path that you choose to take within this industry. So I think knowing and remembering that when you start your career and your journey.
That's amazing. And speaking of shared values, we've been talking about how you have recently made the switch from the agency side to the client side. Tell us about some of the visionary leaders at Kimberly-Clark that really helped you make that leap, make that decision, and how are they part of the decisioning process, and what type of inspiration came from them to really cement you coming over to KC?
I don't know that there's like a single thing that sold me on coming to Kimberly-Clark. There were so many positive experiences along the way. I think many of you have probably seen, Allison Lewis speak on panels or Zena Arnold speak on panels. Rebecca Dunphy is my direct boss, and she runs a really big chunk of the business. There are so many inspirational leaders. There were so many people as I was interviewing for the process who blew me away with their knowledge and their care, and why they were brought to that company. It was about the work, but it was also about why they wanted to be at Kimberly-Clark, and it was about how they wanted better care for a better world, and their real belief in what they did mattered to people, that they were bringing products to the world that made a difference, and that it's about business performance, obviously, but there was purpose behind what they were doing. And I think they do have a vision for the company and what they want to do and how they want to grow. From a media perspective, I think they're doing some really interesting things. There is a transformation happening within the company. There's a modernization of what they're trying to do. And there's some freedom in the role that they brought me in to do to help shape some of that, which was really exciting for me, the ability to be creative and to help make something and be a part of that. That was really what drew me to the role and what excited me about it. And I didn't mention this in my intro, but I'd actually worked on Kimberly-Clark 2 times in my career, once as a media planner as I was starting out in the industry, and once as a lead of their US business before I left Mindshare. So the opportunity to sort of come home, if you will, and be able to work on it in a different capacity felt like an amazing opportunity to try my hand at client side.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important thing to point out that like early on in your career, you may be driven by like money or brand name or location, but as you grow and you learn, you really realize how important it is to find a company and an employer that really aligns with like your own values. Whatever stage of life that you're in, and the importance of how yes, the work is important, but also the people that you work for and with equally as important. And really for me definitely has driven a lot of my decisions of like who's going to inspire me, who's going to really motivate me to you know, to continue the day-to-day, because we don't know what happens. You know, a pandemic might happen and we'll still need to show up, right?
Yes, absolutely, 100%, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. As I was going through this interview process, there are 2 other people that work with me on this team. And I found out that one of the people interviewing for the jobs was somebody I had worked with in the past, and we didn't know we were both interviewing for the job. And it made me that much more excited for the position, to be able to work with somebody that I knew I worked well with, who had a shared vision, who I could go to work with every day. Like, that made the decision that much easier to, you know, take another risk in my career and move into a new job virtually in a pandemic, and change my path once again.
Right, definitely. Talk to us a little bit about your, you know, a pivotal moment or like a career proud moment that you've had, you know, at any of your past companies, or even, you know, an early career moment that you're proud of at Kimberly-Clark.
So honestly, it'll sound a little odd, but my proudest moment was probably in my last week when I was at Publicis. I had just resigned and I had accepted my position at Kimberly-Clark, which I was super excited about. So there was a lot of potential and possibility in what I could do, and I was so excited about that. And then leaving Publicis, I was proud of the work that I had done there. I was really proud of the relationships that I was able to build over the 4 years that I was there. The team that I was leading had gone through a really immense transformation of the people, the process that we were working through, and the tools that we were using on that business. And during that time, we had set as a team a bunch of really ambitious goals for ourselves, and looking back and kind of reflecting backwards and looking forwards. You know, the team was winning awards, they were delivering quality work to the clients, and they were building a really good inclusive team culture that was being driven by some of the more junior employees at the company taking the initiative to drive something different. And during that last week, as I looked back, I did get a number of notes and phone calls from people on the team that weren't just about the work. They were really very personal notes that I was actually really caught off guard by, and I hadn't realized the impact that I had made. And I kept all of them. And I kept them because I wanted it to remind me of the progress that I had made from the first day there to the last day. Because I did make mistakes when I started there, and I did have a lot of growing to do when I had started. And I want a reminder of what I learned and how far I had come.
That's amazing. And I love, you know, I love how just hearing about how you left on a high note, right? I think sometimes, you know, we get so entrenched in our jobs, in our day-to-day, and we sometimes miss the next opportunity. And to be able to have that strength and that motivation to really leave on a high note, I think is an amazing thing that we should all be proud of. So switching gears a little bit, you know, you're obviously a mom of 3 boys. I wholeheartedly believe that working moms are a very resilient group. You know, the pandemic, remote working, you know, homeschooling, all of this stuff obviously has put a lot more not responsibility, but not burden either, wrong words. We've all had to do that double shift at both home and work, right? So talk to us a little bit how you and your husband and your family have kind of worked through these changes of like life as you're leading, you know, big teams on your professional side.
I had to get really good at asking for help. My husband does help me. He stays home. I'm really lucky. My mom is very close. She also helps us. But, you know, honestly, my husband during the thick of it was a lifesaver. He helped a lot with the boys, but I felt like overnight, you know, I had 3 boys at home, and I went from traveling to all of a sudden being everywhere. And really, I don't know that it was a double shift. I think I just had to learn to integrate everything, probably much like everybody else did. And some days were better than others, to be honest. You know, I know when we talked about this initially, like there were days where I would have like one boy underneath the desk, like doing his homeschooling. There would sometimes be one appearing in my conference calls in like full costume, because for some reason during the pandemic, he would like to dress up when it wasn't Halloween, and he would just appear on my calls. my oldest would hop in and give me kisses and hugs in the middle of a presentation. He just didn't really care if I was like presenting. There was one time when my youngest came in and said, "Can you pause your call so I can talk to you about something?" like right in the middle of a presentation. And so there weren't really any boundaries, and I just had to kind of go with the flow. And I think there are a lot of really embarrassing, humbling moments. My office/bedroom, which now became my workspace, has a bathroom right next to it. And there were times they would fly behind me, run into the bathroom, leave the door open, and everybody on the call could hear what they were doing in the bathroom. And I couldn't get to mute fast enough for people not to hear it. So I definitely had to learn to like bring my whole self to work. But, you know, on the flip side of all that crazy, which I think I got to look into, you know, my team's life too. It wasn't just me. My boys know how important, you know, work is to me. And so while it had to come into the home, they know, and we talk about my goals and we talk about their goals. And I'm honest with them about what I love about work and, you know, maybe what I don't love about work. And it makes it relatable to kind of what they're going through at school and with like their sports and their teamwork. And, you know, we try to make it a thing that we can talk and bond over. And I think it's important that they know that I'm following my dreams and why I want to be in this career. It's what I've always wanted to do. And these are brands and things that I've always wanted to work on and that I've grown up with. And I really, really want them to have a strong female role model in their life, not just, you know, one, but hopefully many. And I hope that they see me as one and that I'm setting a good example for them and that they take that as they grow up.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, you mentioned the decision, the family decision for your husband to stay home. I think that's a very common theme that I hear about with many families these days. Yeah. You know, whether that was brought on by the pandemic or just even a conversation that's been ongoing, and there was just not a better moment to, you know, to really transition into that. It's definitely more common and more accepted, I would say, right? I love, you know, I personally do love the fact that our kids get to see actually what we do, right? And even our parents, maybe, right? When you can't explain what you do to your parents, but you're like in their house for 3 months and they're like, oh, so you know, you actually do have, you know, real conversations. I think that's been kind of like really special throughout this time.
I do too.
That, you know, we wouldn't have exposure or have the opportunity to bring about in years past. So. Okay, talk to us a little bit about Stacie's work-life balance plan. What do you do, you know, whether it's a ritual, a regimen in the morning, how do you really handle the full plate that you have, both at home and at work?
Yeah, I mean, look, I probably would be the last to say I have it figured out, and I probably still work way too much, but I do make sure I carve out time in the morning. I have a ritual of going to the gym in the morning before everybody gets up so that it's time for me and I don't feel guilty, you know, about stealing time for them. But I'll be honest, because I know there's probably working moms and working dads on the call or people who are really trying to figure it out. Most days I feel like I'm dropping every ball I have in the air. And I feel like I'm not good at any of the things that I'm doing, but, you know, there are times where I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, the other night there was in the middle of a mix of work and school and different schedules and, you know, sporting activities and 3 kids trying to go places and, you know, coordinating between my husband, myself, and my mom. We forgot that one of the kids didn't eat dinner and it was 9 o'clock and he was like, I didn't eat. And I was like, oh no, that's terrible. So we had a bowl of ice cream, you know, at 9 o'clock. Like we have to start to give ourselves some breaks and some grace and forgiveness. And we started to just try to laugh at the things that we, you know, flub and make a mistake on. And the kids, you know, have started to think it's kind of funny, the craziness that happens in our house. And I think what I do try to do though is make sure that I'm not missing the things that really matter to them. The day-to-day things, you know, you just have to let those things slide, but there are moments where they'll know if I miss it. And I try really hard to prioritize those things. And there have been times where, you know, when we were traveling, I would rearrange flights just so that I could make 10 minutes of an activity so that they knew I was there, that they mattered. I've taken calls from the hallway outside of a basketball game so that I'm there for most of it and I just have to step away. And really, when I find myself agonizing over certain decisions that I make, I have to take a second to say, am I going to regret not being at something, whether that's actually the business meeting or whether that's the event for one of my kids or something that's important to my husband. It's really given me some perspective to say, like, I may not always have to be the one to be there, and I might have to take a step back and let somebody else have a moment to shine, you know, whether that's at work and giving the team space to do the work that they need to do and have their moments to be the ones to be in the spotlight. If I'm not there, then they can have that time to shine, and it gives them space. Or if it's at home and I can't be there, then it gives my husband the time and the space to be the one that the kids see as important in that moment. And they can rely on him, and he can be kind of the hero for that day, and then I can be away. So I think I have to see the positive on both sides, and I think that it's kind of wins in both situations.
Right, definitely. I don't know if you've had a chance to do this in your son's school or not, but highly recommend being the lunch lady and volunteering. It's a very fun and interesting conversations that happen during lunch. Obviously, you know, like you mentioned, there's been some times where you've had to make some tough decisions and calls between work and home.
Yep.
Are you open to sharing some more around kind of, you know, what you've experienced at home and kind of, you know, whether it be with your family, with yourself, and maybe how that's changed your thinking as a leader, you know, at Kimberly-Clark?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when we talk about like the remote work situation and how you support teams and how we kind of get through, you know, the next, you know, few months as we go, you know, either maybe transitioning back into office and continue to support hybrid. I think early on, there were some things that I worked through with my team to adapt quickly. I mean, it happened overnight and we moved to the remote model pretty quickly, but I think there was still a lot to learn. My family and I were sick very early in the pandemic. I think it was November of 2020. And so it was a weird time because not a lot of people were really talking about it. Our youngest actually got it first. And I remember going and taking him in and not being sure what was going on. They diagnosed him, said, good luck, sent us home and said he might get worse. If he does, go to the hospital, and ushered us out the back door. And we left and sat around waiting for the rest of us to get sick, waiting to see what was going to happen to him. And it was scary, and I was still working. And I didn't say anything because nobody was really saying much if they were sick, and I wasn't sick right away. It was a couple days later when I started to get sick, and I tried to kind of work through it, and I made it all the way up until right before Thanksgiving and told maybe one or two people, and finally had to say, I'm done. I've got to rest. I don't really feel well. And it was afterwards that I realized I didn't set the right example as a leader to a team. I had a big team and they saw me working. They knew I wasn't feeling great, but they didn't know exactly what was going on. And when we got back from Thanksgiving and I was a little bit better, I had a team town hall and I brought everybody together and I talked about what had been going on with me pretty openly and pretty candidly, and told the story to the entire team. I mean, I think it was over 100 people on the call. And I openly expressed that I did not want them to handle it the same way. I gave them permission to take the time that they needed for themselves and for their family. And I afterwards got a flood of things saying, oh my God, I was going through the same thing. I think it made me realize that we need to give people empathy, give people space, open the lines of communication, and know that, you know, as much as we need to go back to some sort of standardization and way of working together, there does have to be an understanding that we don't know what's happening with people. So many people had a different experience over the last 2 years, that if we give some empathy, some communication and flexibility to people, then you can be a better leader and you become a manager that people want to work for.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, the past two years has, you know, that empathy muscle that you've been training on at the gym has, you know, kicked into overdrive. You know, I'm sure as a leader, you know, to be that vulnerable with your team and to be that open so early on was, you know, a humbling, but also like a freeing sense of experience that you experienced.
I think there's a couple of reasons I think I'm grateful for that. One related to the COVID situation. I mentioned that my youngest was the one that kind of brought that thinks he brought that home. Who knows? I mean, we don't know exactly, but he was the first one to be sick. And, you know, a couple weeks afterwards, when we were all feeling better, he sat down next to me and gave me kind of a hug. And he said, I feel really awful. I was the one that got all of you guys sick, and you were so sick. And I didn't really realize like the residual impact that something like that would have. And they were all talking about it at school, and they were learning how to like keep everybody safe. But the implication that you don't really talk about is then when you get sick or you think you've got somebody else sick, what that impact is on the person who feels like they got somebody else sick. And so we had to deal with a little bit of that with him, and try to alleviate some of that concern or that guilt that he was feeling. But I think, you know, this topic of mental wellness is something that's really near and dear to my heart. And before I came on to this panel today, I asked my middle son if I could talk about this openly on the panel. But I have, you know, a child who struggles with mental wellness. He has depression, he has ADHD, and he has some severe anxiety that he deals with. And we noticed some behavioral challenges with him early on, and he's been talking to somebody, and he now actually takes medicine. But there are good days and bad days. Somebody actually, I read an article, related it to trying to understand what he's going through, related it to a giant 2-liter bottle of pop that's shaken up all day long, all day long, all day long. And he's so good that at some point it just explodes, and all of that emotion comes out. And usually it comes out at home because it's such a safe place for them. They know that you will love them unconditionally, but they're hiding it from everybody else because they don't know how that will be received by people they don't know. And so I tried to think about that, like at work and with the people I'm leading and the team members that I'm interacting with, especially after the last couple of years and the things that people have experienced. You know, many people lost a family member, and many people dealt with a lot of, you know, things over the summer with the social unrest that I can't understand, and that are deeply personal and impacted people in a way that I will never know or can't relate to. And I feel like I needed to take a step back and allow them to express or take time for themselves to deal with that in a way that they felt was appropriate. And I think the fact that we are now more openly talking about that, one, personally, it made me feel good because it normalized something that I feel like my son was dealing with quietly, and now he feels a bit more comfortable talking about. And I feel like in our industry now, people are more openly talking about it and allowing for accommodations that I think people have needed for a really long time.
Absolutely. I mean, I thank you for sharing that personal story with us in the BI community. I think I mentioned to you that I have a young 2-year-old son. You know, I had a baby right before the pandemic, and you know, as of 6 months ago, I was thinking to myself, I think I'm experiencing delayed postpartum, you know, and that's not something that I would share with colleagues, not even with friends. And the fact that I'm able to, you know, say those words out loud is very reassuring, that I know that I have, you know, both a support network at home and at work that gives me the grace and the space to kind of process and work through that. So, okay, so we're almost up on time. There's so much great conversation to have. You know, when you and I first met, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. So switching gears again a little bit, I want to talk to you about, you know, diversity, DE&I, women's empowerment is a big a conversation and you know, an ongoing area where the industry is getting better at, right? So in your past roles, or even at Kimberly-Clark today, how are you, Stacie, as a leader, really driving, you know, diversity in thought with your direct teams, or even with, you know, cross-functional teams? Can you talk a little bit more about your experience and kind of like where you're leaning in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think much like all of us who have been speaking today, we're all super passionate about this area. And I think, you know, having the privilege of being somebody in a senior position gives you a voice to be able to try to impact change. I think one of the things that I've learned along the way is that being a leader, I have to be a bit sensitive about it. In certain situations, I'm not the expert. I can't even speak as an expert. And so I need to know that and learn that. But I also think as a leader, it's knowing when to listen and when to do. There was a really great initiative in my last position that was started by junior employees who wanted to make a difference. The company itself was doing some really big things and trying to make some strides to make a difference. But I think the team felt a sense of urgency and wanted to see faster, quicker changes. And they felt like they could do that within our team because we were able to just do some things that we wanted to do. And so a bunch of junior level employees decided they were going to form a cultural aptitude team. And they had a little charter, they had an agenda, they had an idea, and all they needed from me and a few other leaders was, you know, somebody to help remove barriers, find them forums to share their idea, get people excited about it so that they would join and participate, and elevate and give them a platform for the way that they were thinking and give them support. So for me, I think one of the things that I can do and what I think others can do is, you know, find those areas of support, help other voices and bring them up. We're in a position to be able to do that now where maybe we weren't before, and knowing that we have the power and the ability to do that. But it doesn't mean that we always have to be the doers. I think we can also be the enablers, and we can also be the ones that listen to help others find their voice.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, part of that as a leader is taking that step back, right? And really empowering, you know, more junior folks to step up into really for them to figure out what their leadership skills are, right? Like, because without that opportunity, without a leader really providing them that runway, like how do you get to test and really experience, you know, where your leadership strengths are and where you need to develop.
Yeah, and there were so many smart and talented individuals within that group who taught me things. They just needed somebody to give them, you know, a platform and a place and a voice within the company.
Absolutely. So just to kind of close things out, I would love to know and hear from you, Stacie, what's like your theme for 2022? What's your theme song? Like whatever, what is your, you know, it's not the resolution, but like what are you excited about for the new year?
I don't know that I have a theme song or like a drum beat, but I think for the first time in a really long time, I'm feeling very optimistic and hopeful about what's to come in 2022. And I think that's what I want to carry forward into the new year. I'm excited to be closing the book on 2020 and 2021, but I'm feeling really energized and hopeful about next year.
Absolutely. Same here. Same here. So we're right up on time. If there are any questions, please throw them into the chat. So let me give a few minutes or a few seconds for that. While we're waiting, Stacie, can I ask you what are you binge watching? What are some of the podcasts that you're listening to, or some new artists that you're into lately?
Oh, I think did a question just come in? What am I listening to?
What are you listening to while you work out?
Oh my gosh, it's so not exciting. I go to like I go to group workout classes, so it's sort of like a CrossFit mix of things, and they have music playing, and it's somewhat awful. It's like a mix of like 80s metal music to try to motivate you and inspire you to work out. So most of the time I tune it out and chat with my workout buddies. But I think if I'm binging anything, so I binged Yellowstone over the break, and now I'm so disappointed that I have to watch it in real time. I'm getting really frustrated because I have to watch it episode to episode every week.
That's amazing. So props to you for keeping up your workout regimen throughout the pandemic and with a full family at home, and you know everything that's on your plate at work. So thank you again, Stacie, so much. I had a great time getting to know you and having this conversation, and thank you to the Brand Innovators community.
Well, that was one of our very best sessions. So I hope the audience enjoyed. That was a really great one. And up next, I am super excited to announce that we have Juanita Slappy, the head of multicultural marketing for Cadillac. And her session is going to be moderated by Gina Garubo, the president and CEO of National Public Radio, NPR's sponsorship subsidiary. So they're going to join us right about now. And we are so happy to have you both. Thank you both so much for being here.
Great to see you. Thank you, Sydney. Lovely to see you, Juanita.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, there you go. Thanks, guys.
Here we go. So, Juanita, we're going to do a deep dive into your career, but very briefly, if you would share with the folks your current responsibilities as head of multicultural marketing at Cadillac.
Awesome. Again, hi, Gina. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Brand Innovators, for having me. As Gina said, I have the privilege to work on the iconic Cadillac brand, where I get to leverage consumer insights to drive cultural capital and relevance for consumers and make sure that it's impactful and that everyone feels included. As our parent company says, GM, we are plugged in and we have an EV for everyone as we lean into our all-electric future.
Awesome. So you have had a fascinating career, and I'm just going to ask you to go back a bit and share with the folks your background before joining General Motors.
Okay, I have to laugh as shared, and I said before, I wanted to be Oprah. I'm born and raised here in Detroit, Michigan. Throughout high school and church and other extracurricular activities, I was always like the promotions or PR person. I love graphics, but for some reason, when I went to Hampton University in Virginia, which is a HBCU, they just broke ground on the Scripps Howard School of Journalism. And that just captivated my attention. I said, okay, I want to be an on-air personality, which my family would agree because I like to talk. So I started in television and journalism, working on the newspaper at the Hampton Scripps, where I left as a senior as the editor-in-chief. And that's when I got to first work with NPR. Gina, as I shared with you on the Travis Smiley show eons ago with Dr. Hilda Hutchinson. But after that, I went on to ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports in Bristol, Connecticut, and worked in the sports arena with some major icons like Stuart Scott and Boomer and Stephen A. Smith, Pardon the Interruption. And then after that, my mom did pass and I had to come home. So her homegoing was my homecoming to Detroit. And I returned to work at WJOB, the FM radio station at the time. And then it was a burgeoning time for the city of Detroit, and the Super Bowl was here in Detroit. And that's where I was, I guess, introduced to marketing and sponsorship fulfillment and what does it mean for brand alignment. And that really set my feet on fire for auto, working as a publicist back in 2005-06 for the 39 Southeastern Michigan Chrysler Jeep Superstores. And then after that, I went to work for, at the time, the largest multicultural ad agency, Global Hue. That was the agency of record for Chrysler and working on projects like Imported from Detroit with Eminem, Beats by Dre for the Chrysler 300, Verizon and Walmart, just to name a few, and the US Census campaign. And then I got a call to go work over at Ford with agency alignment of Uniworld Group, working on Ford and Lincoln Motor Company, overseeing experiential and PR. And again, I'm a de facto auto girl. So that was Chrysler or FCA, Stellantis, Ford, and now here at General Motors. And I've been here, April will make 6 years that I've been at GM.
Okay, so tell us a bit about your journey through General Motors to Cadillac.
Oh, for sure. Following my passion of diversity, equity, and inclusion and multicultural, again, going to a HBCU, attending a diverse high school here in Detroit, I didn't know it was a thing because I was just immersed in it, and whatever that it was to make people feel seen, valued, and included, that was my heartbeat, and that's where I wanted to go. So joining GM in 2017 on the diversity communications team, ensuring that each brand had relative representation, talking to diverse audiences across all of GM nameplates. I joke that GM is 5 brands, if not more, when you add on OnStar, but from a divisional nameplate standpoint, Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac, I've had the privilege to work across all of them. After diversity communications, I went on to do program operations, and that allowed me a line of sight to see design, engineering, purchasing all come together for what our vehicle reveals look like. One of my most favorite was a Cadillac XT6 that we debuted in 2019. I was a part of that launch that took place in Virginia. And then coming over to the Cadillac brand, it'll be 2 years in April that I've been at the helm of the multicultural team.
Exciting. So share with everybody a bit of General Motors' heritage with multicultural marketing, and then also Cadillacs. But first, General Motors as a corporation.
Oh, for sure. I think the beauty that we always talk about in multicultural is an everybody job, right? So our current mantra, everybody in, it is an inclusive behavior that everyone has to think diverse. And I always say that it starts with diversity of thought, not so much ethnicity or gender, right? Because we're all different in our own walks and journeys. And that's something that GM takes stock in and pride, and not only for our consumers, but for our employees, making sure everyone feels involved and seen and valued. And that's leveled up to the products that you see on the road. As our North Star is safety. A lot of what consumers see, whether on television, experiential, or in our products, is by someone on the team raising their hand. We want to make the world better for everyone. And I mean, that's also where we're going from an EV perspective and lessening the carbon footprint. From a Cadillac perspective, on the heels of celebrating 120 years,
Wow.
this past year, like I said, an iconic brand built on innovation and technology. I take personal pride of being a second generation Cadillac employee. My grandfather is a retiree. My maternal grandfather is a retiree of Cadillac. My paternal grandfather is a retiree of Ford. So when you talk about being in the epicenter of the Motor City, what automotive means to the Midwest and to the world, Cadillac is the cusp of, being on the first to start air conditions and other things in vehicles that you may not have known of. And then we're synonymous with music. Music is a language within itself. It's universal. So when you talk about multicultural or a multi-pronged approach to move the needle, both the GM brand and the Cadillac brand have been doing it for a very long time.
Wow. And so share with us some of the activations that you've overseen, been involved with, and why you would consider those really powerful vehicles for how you work.
Absolutely. I'll start from the Cadillac lens. Most recently, we launched an NFT that was created by a 13-year-old NFT artist called Nyla Hayes. We won a OMA award for that digital expertise online from media posts. And the beauty is that Cadillac champions big dreams and bold ambitions. Talk about being 13, entering a web space of art, not knowing that this art will fuel your legacy, that it will fuel, generational wealth, and really following your passion. And that is truly in the DNA of Cadillac. So we married that NFT around Black Music Month. We created a spot with philanthropist, rap artist Killer Michael Render, as people may know him. And he debuted his song in the spot that we debuted for Black Music Month, and it was called Black Future. It's about seeing things in color, seeing things that you would want to see them through adversity and triumph. And that was a microcosm of working with the talent like Killer Mike, who's an advocate for community justice, working with Nyla Hayes, a 13-year-old visionary. Her NFT art paralleled with Nick Davis, who was another NFT artist. And then the NFT created by Nyla Hayes was auctioned for a charitable donation to Save the Music, where we amassed over $20,000. So it was a full 360 approach from commercial, influencer, and the fact that we had a charitable donation and ushered Cadillac into the Web3 space, which leans on our innovation, right? It's at the heart and DNA of who we are. As it relates to General Motors, over the summer, we participated in Made in America, the music festival that takes place in Philadelphia, right? The lion's share of where change has happened. And we brought our Hummer EV under the GM Diversity COE, Center of Excellence, because we know everyone doesn't know about EVs, so we have to get out in a grassroots initiative and educate. We're a very sensory people in place. We want to get out, see it, touch it, and not just see the commercial. So those are two examples of how we go out to community to champion what we're doing and help educate, and also how we champion pioneers and trailblazers such as Killer Mike and Nyla Hayes, all for a beautiful cause.
And Juanita, how do you measure the success of events and initiatives like that?
Oh, well, of course, being a true marketer, I joke at the heart of what I do. I am a car salesman, and I get to do it in a very multifaceted way, but hand raisers. When we can entice people to learn more about our products, when you do data capture on site and we understand where they are in market. Do you even want to learn about EVs? Are you in market for an internal combustion engine, an ICE vehicle? So that's one way. Then sentiment. What do people feel and see about the brand? What resonated through that commercial? With Black Future, one could be art. Another could be the fact that it was shot in Atlanta. Killer Mike is a hometown person, like many of us are. So did that resonate because you saw yourself in that spot? You saw when you pick up your own vehicle and you drive around your neighborhood with your friends or family, and then naturally conversion and sales. We want to know, we want consumers to know that we have a product for you under the GM halo, under our divisional brands, or from a luxury standpoint with Cadillac, whether that's a CT5 sedan, all the way up to our Escalade V that was featured in Killer Mike's spot, as we debut things. When you think about full-size luxury SUVs, we want you to think about Cadillac, and that's what our spot, experiential, and things of that nature do. And shameless plug, Cadillac.com/audacity. That is where our cultural creative lies within Cadillac. So we have hand raisers, measurement, heat maps, how long you stay on our website to see what we're talking about, whether it's Nyla Hayes, whether it's AAPI month, Hispanic Heritage Month, or Pride. So many ways to gather that data to see what our reach looks like.
Fascinating. So I'd like to talk about launches. I'm going to start by asking you to describe the Lyric launch and how your work contributed to that launch and its success. And then Celestic, an upcoming launch. So please share with Lyric first. And maybe you should describe the vehicle to the folks on this video who don't know as much about Lyric.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for both is electric. Starting with Lyric, it is Cadillac's first entry into electrification. It is our crossover electric vehicle that we have in market. From a multicultural standpoint, we've done work in the African American and Asian and Hispanic consumer audiences on that vehicle. Most recently, well, it's almost a year now, last March for Women's History Month, we debuted our Lyric spot with Goyo, a Grammy-winning artist that is a part of a group. And we went to Miami to film it because people want to see you are where the talent is. And we filmed that in language and in English. And then we carried that throughput from Women's History Month all the way to Hispanic Heritage Month. And now leveraging our relationship with NGL and Hispanicize to do sound sessions. I think the beauty about Lyric is that it naturally lends itself to music, but it's also a feeling when you drive an electric car, what you're doing for your community and for the earth. And Goyo had a chance to talk about that on set, and people had a chance to learn more about the exterior and interior of the vehicle. From the Celestic launch that happened, my personal favorite headline that happened the day after, I want to say it debuted Q4, it said, Cadillac Celestic outrolled the Rolls Royce. Cadillac is the standard of luxury, and we demonstrated that with our second entry point into electrification with our all luxurious Celestic. The fact that you can customize every element of the vehicle, we debuted that in LA with Michael Simcoe, Cadillac lead designer, as well as Lenny Kravitz to talk about the craftsmanship that went into the vehicle and what Cadillac stands for. So whenever you see or get into a Cadillac vehicle, the lights, front and tail light are very distinctive as much as our grille. And we know Cadillac is synonymous with luxury and success. What other brand is an adjective for the way you feel or the type of Cadillac experience you're going to have? So those two vehicles really set that foundation or reset that foundation in launching our EV future.
You know, listening to you, I feel like you and your team take so much care in creating these marketing events, these opportunities, these connections with your current and potential consumers. So talk to me a bit about the research that goes into understanding the customer journey.
That's a good one. And Melissa Grady, our CMO, talks a lot about upper funnel, lower funnel to understand where you are in your journey. So are you a luxury consumer? Are we conquesting? Are you an EV consumer? Do you care about brands that have a central DNA for care and how they show up in the community and about the way you feel? And that's the beauty of Cadillac. We take all of that into our consideration and research. We take into consideration the fact that Killer Mike Spot, I'm proud that his wife drove the vehicle and he was in the passenger seat. So we're sending multi-sensory messages when you watch the creative to say women can drive too, because as we know, as purchase decisions are made a lot by women in the household. So those are those subconscious things that we're doing by putting women and consumers in the driver's seat. And then looking at where we show up. I'm extremely proud of the recent acknowledgement and partnerships with the PGA and US Open that the broader Cadillac team is doing. And when you look at golf, that is a multi-generational sport and one that could take more diversity. And we're proud to infuse that through efforts like the John Shippen golf event that takes place here in Detroit. So it's a multi-pronged approach to how we go to market, from out of home, experiential, and traditional research. I mean, I ask my family all the time, when I say Cadillac, what does that make you think? Do you know the difference between an XT5 and XT6? So much so that my husband can now watch television with me and pick up product placement. And that makes me proud that I'm doing the right thing and he understands what I do.
That's awesome. So given General Motors' priority to work with partners who have diverse ownership, who reach a diverse audience, talk to me about how you choose your media partners or your general marketing partners.
Oh, for sure. It's in partnership, and it goes back to that consumer journey and the customer that we want to engage with. So from a multicultural standpoint, let's look at Revolt. Working directly with the CEO over there, Davio Samuel, and Diddy, right, one of the co-owners of Revolt, understanding that we want to double down in the AA space. We want to go where consumers are. And they have very progressive programming about investing, about travel and leisure. And from a luxury brand standpoint, that aligns with the Cadillac brand. So also understanding we have non-traditional media. Whoever thought social media and LinkedIn and TikTok would take off the way it is, and that you have to have snackable content. You have to have more 10s and 15s and 30s and 60s, you know, and 90s now, and infusing the product placements I talked about before. So it's understanding that the market is changing, and with the market changing, everyone does not consume media the same way. So you have to diversify it. And how do you diversify it? By diversifying your partnerships. So we look at each brand differently. We look at each brand's KPIs and where we want to go, and also what these outlets offer. Is this an audience, you know, that's over indexing in travel and luxury or vehicles, or are you a first-time home buyer? So this vehicle may work better for that. We definitely let the data lead us and work in concert with the outlets.
You know, listening to you, I really get a sense of your pride. I get a sense that General Motors and Cadillac are really at the forefront of how to connect with consumers, where they are, how they're living, with a voice that's appropriate, with the drive and intention to connect with a more diverse audience. How do the employees of General Motors feel about your efforts?
They share in our enthusiasm and pride. From a Cadillac perspective, we feature our employees in our spots. Who better to be the talent than the people who live and breathe energy, innovation, and design into our products? I have the privilege to work with Crystal Wyndham, female designer here at General Motors, first African-American woman designer who helped design the Chevy Malibu, the interior of the 5th generation Cadillac, to our current first entry point in EV, the Lyric. So putting her in a spot so people can see a couple of things: diversity in the workplace, that women can lead in design and STEM. I'm a woman in automotive, that we are behind some of these innovative ideas that come to life. To our Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Tao Nguyen, one of our regional representatives in LA. Well, why not have her talk about her pride, her being a 2nd generation Cadillac employee, to bring it full circle and show the same dedication that you talked about to make it evident. So it sounds like we're doing a good job. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, your pride is really jumping out, and it's infectious. So talk to me about the culture at General Motors and Cadillac, how it may have evolved over the years. I mean, you may not have been there years ago, but your family has been, so you have a sense.
Well, absolutely. I mean, let's just take a step and see the fact that we have a female CEO by the name of, Mary Barra, who is a trailblazer in automotive. Let's talk about the workforce that we have within our ERGs, that we truly listen to the GM plus ERG for our LGBTQ plus collective within General Motors, that we embrace our pronouns, that we embrace this work differently, right? Work appropriate lifestyle that we're in on the heels of a pandemic. We can talk about from an HR lens, some of the things that we've changed for health and wellness and the whole, human being. I like to say I'm a human being and not a human doing. And I have a company that sees that and believes in that and affords me wellness, not just traditional health and wellness, but days of respite from meditation, encouraging me to go walk. I mean, these are things that were probably never thought of, right? To take a mental health or wellness day, to how we celebrate this recent holiday for Dr. King, that it's a day on, not a day off, that we support, marches, or we did over the holiday a food bank workshop or give back to collect food. So it's something that our words are matching our deeds and vice versa. And it's something that we definitely take pride in, even down to GM Cares, which is our, philanthropic internal arm of GM, and how we give back to the community.
So if I have two parts to this question. The first part is, what advice would you give to brand marketers who are newer to multicultural marketing than GM and Cadillac? And then I'll talk to you about, advice to folks wanting to get into it. But what are the successful ingredients for even well-established brands who are new to this?
I'll dovetail on what you just said about the ingredients. It's an inside job. You have to make sure that the ingredient is in it, not on top, right? If you're seasoning something, you want to put it in when you're mixing up all the ingredients, not an afterthought or the cherry on top. So I like to champion that diversity, DE&I, unconscious bias training. It's an everyone job. We all come with our own biases from our own lived experiences and walks of life. So you have to remain open. You have to learn. You have to continuously stretch that muscle. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and having respectful conversations and, open and warm settings. I think the more people collectively work on it, the better you'll be. It's not a one person or one department job. And that's where you'll see the success, when everyone works together.
So you worked on the agency side and then moved to the brand side. What advice would you give to anybody, not necessarily younger aspiring marketers? What advice would you give to somebody wanting to do multicultural marketing, either at an agency or at a brand?
Study and know the culture. Beyond cultural moments, it's not Dr. King holiday. I mean, we have so many holidays, months, moments. Infuse uniquenesses, like in my seat at Cadillac, where we show up in music. It's not an AA thing. It's not a Hispanic thing. Music is a cultural thing. Find the thing that can connect you to the people, the culture, and the community, and you'll find an authentic connection that you can continue to build upon and have the conversation. From the agency to brand side, get comfortable understanding, knowing, or doing all facets. I think the biggest thing I learned early in my career is not just one person's job. Understand how that role, that person, impacts the work that you do. Because sometimes timelines, deadlines, they come, and if you know a little bit about something, you can help move the needle in the engine forward, and you'll be better for it because you'll be a multifaceted wealth of, knowledge. I would say when I was on the PR side of things, I defined PR as being pretty resourceful. No was not an answer. And back then I didn't have Google. I didn't have Cision and some of the other engines that we have now. So be well read, find your connective thread, whether you're in automotive, where you may have gone to school, where you may live. What kind of coffee do you like? You never know what uniqueness can connect you with someone in an authentic fashion that you can build upon.
So, given who you are, given your pride, given your expertise, given your role, how do you help recruit talent to General Motors?
Being open, being proud of my quote unquote non-traditional background, if you will, coming from a historically Black college and university, living in Michigan, right, which is a Big Ten state. My father went to Michigan. My uncle, went to Michigan State, going back to my school and sharing those opportunities, understanding why the schools or places we recruit from, they may or may not be diverse, and making those recommendations and sharing the work that I do, whether it's Brand Innovators and the various platforms you can share, to talking about what I do. I think a lot of times, while I joke and I said I wanted to be Oprah, it was visual and tangible. I hope that the work that we're doing, Melissa Grady and Deborah Wall, it can be tangible to other people, because I joke that nobody really knows what I do, right? My family jokes about what is she doing, but when I get to explain how you can change perception, how you can drive intention, how music, if it's a Cadillac commercial or, a Buick commercial, that those are the things that is a part of my job, to inspire other people to follow their heart. Those are just a few ways that I hope I recruit, inspire, and draw people to General Motors.
Awesome. And what's next for Cadillac?
Our all-electric future, of course. We're about to debut a few new vehicles that will be coming very soon. I cannot say at the moment, doubling down on our V series, our Escalade V, sustaining where we are from our Lyric vehicle, as well as our ICE vehicles, because we know we need time to get people to understand electrification and charging and what that means to your life and your lifestyle, and continuing to show up for cultural moments every day, not being episodic. That is truly at the heart of the work that I do, so that the full consumer base can see the Cadillac and the General Motors as a brand for them, because we care 365 about the person and about your safety.
Very cool. So tell me, what surprised you as you're doing this work? Was there a moment? Was there an event or an experience that you were just you didn't have high expectations, or you didn't quite know how it was going to turn out? What has surprised you about the work you do?
A lot of times, what consumers see and what we see on television, it may take years, or months in the making. But when you can work with the right influencer, whether it be Killer Mike, when you can work with dynamic partners like a Melissa Butler, the CEO of the Lip Bar, who's from Detroit, who mimics that pride, that grit, that drive for innovation, to do something differently and take a risk, how well people receive them and the Cadillac brand, and they don't see it as unauthentic. I think the fact that I worked across all big three, I've had more people come up to me with a Cadillac story. Just sheer, I have one, or my dad had one, or I remember getting picked up in one. I mean, just the reverence that people have for our brand. I thought it was just me, but it's not. The fact that this brand transcends time, the fact that it can take you from your first vehicle to taking around the president, of the United States, just the affinity for the same pride I have is something that definitely caught me off guard.
What kind of advice do you have for young people who are looking to make a career in marketing and advertising in general?
Make joy your job. Follow what really sets your heart on fire. For me, it's impact. And don't think that if you don't see it, that it's not there. That's what I would definitely tell young me, because I had no idea what a marketing experiential whatever was. Find something. We've heard the quote, right? If you choose a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That the things that you do innately, the things that you would do without being financially compensated, you can't be compensated for whatever that is. take stock in that, learn about it, find other people like you, and also collect a tribe of people who aren't like you and have different passion points. So you can learn from them as well. I think the biggest thing I thought leaving high school, or college, oh my goodness, tests were over. Every day is a test. Every day is a chance to learn, to be different. And that is how you grow, and to continue to work on getting comfortable being uncomfortable. But if you stay prepared, you'll be okay.
Yes. So I'm not going to get too personal, but what inspires you? What motivates you?
I had a family, and my parents were amazing at making sure I was exposed to different things I liked and things that I didn't like. They did not accept no for an answer. They also realized I like to talk, and they put me in groups or activities to things to foster whatever I was passionate about at the time, and gave me a chance to test and learn before the idea of test and learn was a thing. So naturally driving for my parents to be proud of me, but to make an impact for those around me. I think that's the biggest thing. Some things that we do in marketing, it just makes sense. It just makes, pure common sense. So when I get to connect the dots to make those things happen, that's what definitely drives me, and making sure that each person, brand, or product shines and has a relevance. That I take great pride in that as well.
So I can imagine if a young person saw this, or a person who sort of feels stuck in what they're doing. So you're inspiring, you're proud, you're enthusiastic, you're smart, you're articulate, but not everybody has your drive or your courage. Maybe you could share some tips for someone who may be a little less outgoing, a little less confident.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm not like this every day either, right? We're all human. You definitely have your ebbs and flows, but you have to build your tool belt, or your Swiss Army knife, as a friend said, with what can keep you and get you going. So for me, it's podcasts. I listen to Super Soul Sunday a lot, and Oprah had someone that talks about passion, right? And I think sometimes people think you have to have passion for the things you like. What they said was, you have to have passion in everything you do, because if you find joy in everything you do, it won't be so much of a chore. But that's a practice and a habit that you have to practice. Also, a song that I listen to is Frank Sinatra, Pick Yourself Up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. Every day, every moment is a new thing. And I have to give this one to my husband. He calls it Feelings Island, right? Everybody has a lull. Go to Feelings Island, pack light, don't stay long. It's more like a layover.
I love that.
So get out of Feelings Island. It's possible.
And were there groups or associations and connections that helped you stay inspired and motivated in the industry over the years?
Oh my goodness, there's too many to start. ANA, AdCraft, ERGs within my various organizations, having like-minded men and women of color to come and talk about, these kind of things. I'm an avid reader of Smart Briefs. As a professional journalist, NABJ, the National Association for Black Journalists, in PR and marketing, journalists are our main allies. So tapping into that. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So tapping into my sorority base when I'm trying out a new product or service, I need a safe space to land. So I want to try it on people with smiling faces and hearts to give me response and critical feedback. And I would say friendship circles, doing 360s. What do you think about my performance? Asking managers before it's time for the review. I think that was the biggest lesson learned in my career. You don't wait till mid-year or end of the year. You ask for that consistent feedback ongoing, and remain open and see if it's something to make you better and push you through. And if it doesn't feel right, understand where it may be coming from and try not to take it personal. And then my best friend from college, I'm so fortunate that we all went into media or marketing, and we're still connected to this day, and we have group chats. So you have to have people that you can check and just get a pulse check on what are you feeling and what's going on in the industry.
At NPR, we are committed to having a younger, more diverse workforce. 40% of NPR's employees are people of color, and it's a higher statistic in management. Our on-air talent is diverse, the voices, the people we interview. So it's a concerted effort, including reaching a younger and diverse audience. What do you want? What would you say to media companies in terms of your view of their efforts along reaching and being more diverse, and what you think is important for the future of America?
The connection and the message is important for reach. So whenever reviewing a proposal, understanding, is this just a cookie cutter, media spot by plan, or did you take the time to help dig into Cadillac, understanding that we have a penchant for music and we're approaching the 50th anniversary of hip hop? So when you bring something to us, does it resonate where we're going as a brand? Does it resonate from a luxury standpoint? Is it a tentpole or opportunity where one of the on-air personalities is a former tennis or golf pro? Could we show up together, at events? So going back to that partnership piece, like we're a partner to drive, productivity and resonance. So when I review things of that sort, when I hear podcasts or see integrations done in that fashion, it makes my heart smile because it's authentic and it was created just for that brand, because we all share media. So let's nobody, can own one media, but I can own one moment, space, and time to make it purposeful for my brand.
That's exciting. So what's in store for you in 2023, Juanita?
Getting back into the workforce as, we transition to in-office meetings. I'm in office right now. Also, growing that reach that I talked to you about. What other moments do we need to lean into, whether it's music? You have all the red carpet events coming back up. And now the footprint for Experiential looks different. Everyone has sensitivities on the heels of COVID. So how are we thoughtful about our approach? Also, immersing more consumers into our products. In Glendale, California, we have the Cadillac Electric Studio. So you can come in and see our electric vehicles, get inside of them and learn more about Cadillac's DNA. And we work with the chocolatier, Philip Ashley, who is a proprietary chocolatier for the Cadillac brand. So when you purchase that lyric, you can get some Cadillac designed lyric chocolate, 4 different flavors based on the DNA of the vehicle. And the same for Celestic. So more genuine partnerships to move the needle.
So do you feel like part of your role is helping the dealers connect with consumers in a way that they couldn't imagine?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And when I joke to say that I'm a dealer, I pay reverence to them as well, right? Because we're here making sure that we have the creative that they need and then giving it to them for their social media channels, so they can leverage it. So their consumers, if they're Asian consumer base or Hispanic, that they not only have the creative, but it's in language. It's around the right time. Making sure from a dealer perspective, we have dealers that look like our ever-changing consumer base. So absolutely, dealers are at the heart of everything that we do.
That's great. And it sounds to me that, you have a large and loyal consumer base that's connected, and you're looking to make more emotional connections with a more diverse set of consumers.
Absolutely. I won't tell my age, but the beauty is that I love when people come and tell me I have a Cadillac and they're in their 20s or their 30s, right? I think I speak highly of my grandfather and I learned how to drive on an 88 Seville, but even before coming to General Motors, I bought myself a Cadillac SRX, which is now our XT5. There's a sense of pride and success when you get your own Cadillac. And that's something that I didn't realize was such a shared energy, not only with my parents' age group, but also people in my age sector. You know what I mean? I'm looking when I drive cars to see who are in our cars, and it is a younger audience because not only is it an innovative brand, but it's a cool brand. I mean, when you say you have a Cadillac, it's just an infectious thing, an energetic thing to say, especially as we get into this EV space.
So Cadillac owners probably have a lot of pride
A lot.
and identify as being a Cadillac owner. When you layer on EV, does that go up a notch or two?
Absolutely. I think that consumers want to see where automakers such as General Motors and Cadillac have been in the game for a long time, built on safety, and now they're adding various EVs to their portfolio. So you know it's based on sound, safe design and innovation, and you can continue your journey in any of our products, but I really hope it's a lyric.
Ah, yes. So I'm very excited. You can't give us any more hints about the new launch?
No, not yet, but it's coming. I would say stay engaged. A lot of the information we have will be on Cadillac.com. Culturally speaking, it's on Cadillac.com/Audacity. But we have a lot of beautiful vehicles. And as Rory Harvey says, our lineup is so fresh, so distinctive with our lights. You will not be disappointed.
I won't be. And you are an amazing, inspiring executive, Juanita. Thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing your wisdom with everybody who's able to see this video. So thank you.
Oh my goodness, Gina, thank you. It was amazing talking to you. And again, thank you to Brand Innovators for always reaching out and to include myself and the Cadillac brand.
Thanks. Sydney, you're back in control here.
Fantastic. Thank you both again so much. We really appreciate both your time. This was a really fantastic session.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was such a wonderful session, and we are going to keep the ball rolling as we are on to our next session, which is going to highlight Jonelle Brown, the Director of Global Franchise Planning and Marketing from Paramount Pictures, and Christine Pohl, Director of Field Marketing from Sprinklr, is going to be moderating. So we're having them join us right about now. And amazing. Awesome. Thank you both for being here. And I will turn it over to you both to kick it off.
Thank you, Sydney. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you to Brand Innovators for having both myself and Jonelle. So as Sydney said, my name is Christine Pohl. I am the Director of Field Marketing at Sprinklr, a unified CXM platform management company. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Jonelle Brown, who works at Paramount Pictures. Jonelle, did you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, share some insight on your background?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonelle Brown, Director of Global Franchise Planning and Studio Marketing for Paramount Pictures Theatrical Consumer Products. So super excited to be here today and with you, Christine. And my background, so currently I'm at the Paramount Pictures and Paramount Global company, but I've also spent time, in other areas of Paramount Global, including Nickelodeon. I was at Macy's Parade and Entertainment Group before that. And I also started my career at the Walt Disney Company in a couple of different business units, both in television, domestic syndication, cable sales, and then the Disney on Broadway marketing team as well. So I really have a nice broad background and experience in the marketing industry.
Some amazing brands that you have worked for, which leads me into my first question, Jonelle. So brands obviously make an impact on everything that we do. It's how we choose to invest, how we choose to spend our time. So just curious from your perspective, what brand do you first remember that made an impact on you? It can be one that you worked for or one that you've had an engagement experience with.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm completely dating myself in terms of brands and really solid campaigns and even jingles from way back in the day. I'm very much an 80s baby, 90s kid. But I would say really hearkening back to my childhood was Toys R Us had that Toys R Us Kid campaign. And I remember it so vividly. Obviously, I was their target demographic as said child. But then I really loved, several years later, they had this really lovely full circle moment where they brought back those kids who are now adults to recreate that commercial as well. And that was something that really stuck out to me. Again, just targeting that Toys R Us kid. I still feel like I'm a Toys R Us kid inside. So I think that was one of those campaigns that was really timely, really perfect, and something that has stood the test of time as well.
Absolutely. I'll tell you one of my favorites, which is a very interesting one as well. So every Christmas season, holiday season, For some reason, when I was a kid, my family always used to get excited when the Hershey's commercial came on, the really short one where
Yes.
the kisses dance and
Your
it's like a
bells,
little
yeah.
jingle. Yeah. My family would always say it's the start of the holiday season. That's like a nice reminder for us. So that's a brand that has definitely made an impact, I think, on myself, my family. So obviously taking it back to why we're here, women in leadership, you within your career, I would love to hear about who inspired you to be a leader. How did you get to where you got to today? Did you have any key mentors along the way?
Yeah, no, great question. And I've had several mentors, and I think early in my career, I didn't realize how important it was to have mentors. I think I was very much focused on, oh, I graduated and I just need a job. So as I started to move throughout my career, I started putting two and two together and realized that there are certain people who are looking out for me, who are giving me advice. And the moment I really saw that leadership was an opportunity and an option for me was when I first joined Macy's Parade and Entertainment Group. I had a manager, her name was Nicole, who was my manager for only about 6 weeks or so. And she joined, when I joined the team, she then left to go on to a different team. But those formative weeks, she really onboarded me fiercely and gave me all of the foundational skills I needed to be successful in the role, so that when she left, she knew that I had what I needed to actually do the job. And that was an opportunity without having a manager in place that sort of forced me to step forward and lead these meetings and lead teams and oversee campaigns and launch them all on my own, and something that I didn't really have that opportunity to do before. So that was the first moment that I realized, wow, look at me. I'm able to lead these teams. I'm able to work on these campaigns, and people are listening to me, and they're taking my thoughts and my opinions very seriously. And it was that moment that sort of sparked me seeing my future and really understanding, oh, there's more than this. I can actually grow and lead, and it's exciting, and I enjoy doing that. So that was probably one of the first moments that I thought it was ever even an option for me. Amazing.
Do you have a team that you oversee currently in your role?
Yes, I have a small but mighty team. I really lean very heavily on one of my colleagues, and it's been really nice to see her grow and me being able to groom her and have her start to explore her own leadership skills as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's really important. I have a team of 5 now here at Sprinklr, and all women, not by purpose. That's just how it shaped out. But one of the really important pieces for me, obviously, in stepping into, this is my first director role within Sprinklr. So this is the largest team I've managed. But one of the most important things to me is not only how can I manage them from obviously project activity basis, but how can I help mentor them? How can I help teach them what I know and help them continue to grow? So I love that.
That's great. That's great.
So as a female leader, what is some of the best advice you received, either from a mentor in the past or from someone you've worked with, family member, could be anyone, but has helped you shape where you've gone?
Yes. I would say when I was leaving my second job and I went around, telling people that I was leaving and, giving notice, I went to one woman in particular, just let her know. And she said something to me that was so simple, but really stuck with me. And I try to share that with others as well. And so I told her, I was like, hey, I'm leaving. And she said, good for you. No one cares about your career more than you do. And I think it's so simple, but then again, we're always trying to figure out, like, what does our family want? How do our parents feel about it? What does our boss feel about it? And it really does sit with you to create your own path and get yourself to where you want to be. And so it's just a reminder, because sometimes we do get bogged down in the everyday, to remind yourself, what do you want in your career and how do you plan to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of kind of switching between organizations, obviously, as we talked about, you've worked for some amazing brands. How has that decision been to leave one role, pursue a new opportunity?
Yeah, for me, it's always been about what can I learn? Especially as a marketer, it's important to have a well-rounded skill set. My first job was in sales, and that's essentially, B2B marketing. And so gaining that area of skill. And my second job was more brand marketing, which I discovered I absolutely love. And then my role shifted a little bit, where I was doing a little bit more project management. And I discovered that's a great skill set to learn, because that will serve you the rest of your career. So I transitioned to a project management role, and so on and so forth. And my time at Macy's was in digital marketing, and that's something I only dabbled in before. And now I have this solid background in digital marketing. So for me, it's really about, what can I learn in this role? How does this helping me grow? How is it adding to my toolkit as a marketer, so I could be this really well-rounded executive and can wear multiple hats, and I know how to talk to different teams. I worked on a creative services team for a little bit as well. So that is another, skill set and just opportunity and experience that I can then leverage further my career. So I really think it's, what can you learn? Have you learned it? Go into your every new job with a plan and really figure out, who do you need to meet with? What sort of projects are you excited about? And how can you leverage that to make sure that you're getting as much out of the company as they're getting out of you?
Amazing. So in your current role, what are some of the challenges you face? What do you oversee within what you do at Paramount?
Yes. So I like to say, I'm a part of the consumer products team. So I like to say I bookend the consumer products life cycle. So I come in at the top and develop any sales materials, one sheets, pitch decks, sizzle reels that are used to sell in our movies to licensees and retail partners. So it could be a movie from our back catalog, Godfather, or Mean Girls, or Clueless, or it can be one of our new releases. Most recently, we had Top Gun Maverick, which was a huge hit for us.
Loved it.
Right? That's so good.
Loved it.
Great. So it's really selling in those movies. And then once it's sold in, I sort of step out. There's a different team that oversees the product development process. And then I come back on the tail end once we get into the marketing phase of it. And especially when we have a big movie that would require a really large marketing campaign, how does consumer products sort of help support that? Because we are sort of marketing you take home with you, right? And so it's making sure that we're aligned with the larger theatrical marketing campaign, or if there's something out of our back catalog or an anniversary that's being celebrated by the studio, how are we helping to support that as well? So it's nice to really see the full life cycle of how a product comes to life, which is always really exciting.
Amazing. Top Gun Maverick, such a good movie.
Yes,
I watched it. I've watched it a few times because I've been traveling a lot for work lately. And it's one of those that every time I'm on a plane, I'm like, oh, let me give it another watch because it was that good.
It's a great plane movie, right?
It really is. And it's the perfect amount of time too.
Oh, I love that you love it.
So as you're working through these different campaigns from a marketing perspective, how in tune are you with the consumer? I imagine very in tune with what the market's looking at. How do you use some of that consumer engagement to shape your marketing plans?
No, absolutely. That's a great question. One of the first things I always do is start in the research. Like, who are we going after? What makes sense? And it can be a two-pronged approach, because when it's a new release or something that's original, you don't necessarily have anything to compare it to, internally necessarily. So then you look from a competitive standpoint and say, what movies are similar? Who are they going after? And how do we look to target that same audience? When it's something from our back catalog, like for instance, we are now in the anniversary year for Grease. Grease turns 45 this year, which is super exciting. And so because it turns 45, we have 45 years of research and information to leverage as we start working on our campaigns. And what's great is that while we have that core demographic, the question and the sort of task for marketers is, who else can we get? Who else hasn't, I don't know how you haven't heard about Grease, but who hasn't heard about Grease, or who is new or who's young and up and coming? How do we really leverage that? So I think that's one of the biggest things for us is really diving into the research and setting our strategy based on that concrete information, while also trying to, from a halo perspective, get new audience members or get new exposure and visibility to an audience or a demographic that hasn't really engaged with our IP in the past.
Makes complete sense. And similar to kind of what we look at on the Sprinklr side, obviously being close to more of the customer engagement, customer experience that we work with brands every day on. So kind of bringing it back to more of women leadership, women in marketing leadership, how do you show up at work every day as your true, authentic self?
Yeah, I love that question because I feel like everyone's trying to figure out how do you do that? And I like to remind myself that I am a multifaceted person. So, work Jonelle is slightly different from home Jonelle. But at the end of the day, it's all still me. It's just a different side of me. So I make sure that I really lean into my professionalism, but also sprinkle my personality in there as well, because so much of what you do at work is relationship based. So you want to make sure that people get to see the real you while still keeping it professional and above board. I feel like the last 2 years or 3 years at this point of COVID and working at home has gotten us a little casual sometimes. So it is important to put back on that professional lens. So that's something that I take very seriously. I also like to dress a certain way for work. I love a good blazer. So I think that also helps my personality shine through while keeping that professional sort of shine in place as well.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. For me, I think when I was younger in my career, first starting out, I felt I had to always portray a certain, I don't even know what the word would be, but I had to have a certain portrayal when I came across at work. And I think now that I'm moving later into my career, I am a new mom. I have an 18-month-old at home. So thank you. Life is chaotic. Work-life balance is real and it's hard. But I think for me, one of the things this past year and having a son has really helped me with is showing up as my true authentic self and figuring out how to have boundaries between work and home life, because that is so real and important. So I think just as you continue to figure out who you are as a person, I can definitely say I am not the same person I was as a 22-year-old graduating college. But I think as you figure out who you are as a person, you obviously can bring that into what you do from a work perspective as well.
Absolutely. And we shouldn't be the same people we were at 22.
No.
Now we're growing, we're changing, we're learning a lot, we're navigating, a new world. So it's important that you remember who that person is or who that young woman was, but also are now coming into your own, which is always terrific.
Absolutely. So you touched on the pandemic a little, and I think obviously all of us life has changed post-COVID. It's a very different world. How do you think the pandemic has changed leadership within organizations?
I would say just leadership in general, it's made leaders a bit more accessible. And I think Zoom has done that because even me personally, I've been able to attend meetings that in the past or pre-COVID, I would have never been able to either A, be invited to, or be able to join in any way, shape, or form, where Zoom is really sort of that equalizer for everyone. And I think it's nice that leaders are able to have these, either town hall meetings or something that comes directly into your home, and you're able to get that visibility and access to them, even if it may not be directly one-on-one, you now are able to see them in a new light. So I really think the accessibility in this Zoom world, or now hybrid world, has actually helped in a lot of ways, that you can now get access to your leaders who before were, in that really lovely corner office or sitting on another floor in your building. Now you get to see them a little bit easier and more accessible more often, which has been, I find it really nice, a nice touch.
I think it's made everyone a little bit more human too. Like it's not someone sitting in that corner office. Like I know for us here at Sprinklr, our CEO is very accessible, is very down to earth. And I think that's one of the things that culturally I really liked about the organization, was that it didn't feel corporate. It didn't feel stuffy to that degree. So I think the pandemic has helped make a lot of organizations more human.
Yeah, that's great.
So explain to me, was there a pivotal career changing moment within your career so far that has helped you get to where you've gotten to, or that you're very proud of?
I would say, and I know I touched on this earlier, is my time at Macy's and being able to have sort of forced into a leadership role because I didn't have a choice. My boss wasn't there anymore, so I had to really step up. I think that was the moment that really showed me what I was capable of and what I could do, and I hearken back to that every once in a while. And it also taught me how I like to be onboarded as well. When I start a new opportunity, it taught me to speak up for myself. It taught me that I can learn the job on the job. There was a lot that was really more of a digital marketing role, and I'd only had limited digital marketing experience, but my manager hired me solely on potential. And she said that to me. She said, Jonelle, I know you didn't have this experience, but I knew you could learn it. And so because she took that chance on me, it allowed me to discover a new side of myself. And so I think that was really the catalyst that sort of set me on my current path to realize, look, I may come in and not know 100% of everything, because I feel like as women, we feel like we have to know everything and we don't really give ourselves grace to learn and grow. And that was the opportunity in the moment to say, like, you don't need to know everything, because you're capable, you're more than capable of learning how to do this and then excel at it as well. And so I think that was something that was really important to me. And I cherish my time there, because it really helped elevate me in a way that I never thought was an option for me before.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I've been hiring people into current roles recently, as I said, I just have a fully staffed out team, which is very exciting for me. But one of the things that I've looked for is not only do they have the skills that they need to achieve kind of the basic level goals of the job, but also do they have the potential to grow and really learn something? Do they have the desire to want to learn more? That's something that I feel like is always good to see, because it helps not only you as a manager, but it helps empower them to kind of be their true self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
So what advice would you give your younger self, or to someone just starting out from college?
I would give the advice I would give, and it's something that I didn't know. I thought it's silly looking back on it now, but my family's from another country, so no one in my family works in corporate America in the capacity that I did. So I didn't have anyone to help sort of guide me. So when I got my first job, I thought that this was it. I was like, oh, okay, well, I saw on TV that you get a job and you stay there for 30 years and you retire and that's it. But I knew sales was fine, but it wasn't really what really excited me. And it wasn't until later when I was observing other colleagues who left the company, I was like, oh my God, people leave. They don't stay forever. They go to other jobs. And so that was like something that really sparked a little, light bulb moment in me. So the advice I would give to young people and young women in particular starting out their roles is, your first job is not your forever job. It's okay. Like, if you love it, great. And then figure out how you can grow and learn as much as you can. But if it's a foot in the door or more experience on your resume, that's absolutely fine too. And so, in the past, I've been mentoring young women, and I always try to remind them, like, look, it's okay if you don't absolutely 100% love what you're doing now. It's not forever. Learn as much as you can from it, and then transition to get yourself closer to where you want to be.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of builds on my next question for you. So I think you being a mentor, obviously I have a team of people that I mentor as well. How can we as female leaders continue to encourage them to opt in for potential leadership positions as they arise?
I would encourage women to look out for one another, to take other women under your wing. That's been beneficial for me. And I've also had, men help guide me and give me advice as well. So I think it's important to look out for each other, mentor, groom. I have a friend who's a dear friend and a mentor who sends me books and articles and just unsolicited, because she thinks it's important for me to know. And so I take that very seriously, and I try to do the same for the young women in my life, and the mentees who have come across my path, to make sure that I'm supporting them and figuring out what do they actually want, and making them feel okay to want that, and then working on them to put a plan in place to get them there, even internally, because again, as I said, it's okay that you might not want to be in this position forever. That's fine. How do we get you to where you want to be as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. So one other question I had for you: how did you navigate some of the corporate America power structures early in your career versus now later in your career? How did you navigate some of that and deal with adversity?
Yeah, early my career was tricky because, like I said, I didn't really have a lot of people to help guide me. So I made mistakes. I was very much heads down, just get your work done, and people will recognize how hard you work. And it took me a few years to realize, like, no one's recognizing how hard I work. I'm just getting the work done. How do you continue to elevate yourself? And then it wasn't until as I continued along in my career path, I realized, oh, there's also the visibility factor. And it's also about who knows you. What relationships are you building? And so that's something that I take very seriously now, having a friend before you need a friend as well, and making sure that the right people are aware of who you are, what you do you do it well? Because you only want to be known for the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
and continuing on that path and really growing your network and nurturing your network also. So I think that's something that it took me a little too long to find out, but now that I know, it's something that I try to apply to my career.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that too is being your own self-advocate and speaking up when you need to speak up, like you said, because I remember when I first started in my career, I was in a marketing development program right out of college at a tech company, and I was the only girl. It was all men.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one day, one of my coworkers came to me because I was not the loudest person. I was pretty quiet, pretty reserved because I was nervous. It's hard at that point when you're first learning out. But he came to me one day and he's like, wow, you're kind of like the silent overachiever. He's like, we don't hear from you, but you do an amazing job. And at that point, it was a pivotal moment for me because I knew I was doing a good job personally, but I wasn't the loudest. And I didn't feel like I needed to be the loudest on every call and on every presentation. But him saying that made me realize I had to advocate for myself and nobody else was going to do it for me. So I could be a shining star on paper as much as possible, but unless I was really building those relationships and helping to kind of elevate myself, it was not going to happen overnight.
No, and I think, and to that point, I feel as though, especially women and young women, sometimes we mistake work for school, because at school you can be quiet, silent, type in, submit your papers, get your assignments done, get those A's, get on the dean's list, and you're recognized for your work without having to shout it from the rooftops. Whereas in corporate America, you do have to really, toot your own horn. And so often we're told that it's shameful or embarrassing. We shouldn't do that, but that is how you get ahead, honestly. So I think that I'm glad you got that piece of advice.
learned it, did not receive it. But yeah. So what's something, this could be podcast, song, quote, anything. What's something that motivates you and helps you on a daily basis achieve at the level that you're achieving?
Oh, wow. I have a playlist within my iTunes called You Got This. And
I love that.
It has a variety of, upbeat songs, inspirational songs, fun songs. So I usually put it on shuffle when I need like that extra boost of inspiration and just fun. And it just makes me happy. So my You Got This playlist really, really helps, keep me motivated.
I love that. One of my coworker, she always plays the song Higher Love, the remix one that's pretty new.
Oh, with
anytime, yes. Anytime she's like, she needs a pump up, she is having a bad day, that's how she turns it around.
I love it.
Music can definitely help do that.
Yes, I feel like I should add that song to my playlist because I have it in my iTunes. I'll throw it on.
Definitely should. So another question for you. How do you put yourself first and practice self-care? I feel like, especially in the post-pandemic world, a lot of people, the lines are very blurred between work life, personal life, and balancing everything. How do you put yourself first, take care of yourself, and still work on developing yourself?
Yeah, no, that's great. And you're absolutely right. The lines are very much blurred. And honestly, I could probably do a little bit better with enforcing my boundaries. Because, as you think back to pre-pandemic, you got to leave work at work, and now that we're here, you can jump on the earlier call or you can stay later, to take the evening call because you're at home and people know that you're a little bit more accessible. So I've been trying to block time on my calendar, really protect the hours of my day, especially because my role is global, but I'm in Los Angeles. And I used to be in New York and people were used to me in the New York office. So I started blocking those early mornings because people wouldn't think and put me on a 6 a.m. call. And I'm, my goodness, I'm still asleep at that time. It's really trying to protect my calendar, protect my time, block it as much as I can, and then take walks when I need a break. Just away from the computer, getting some fresh air, getting some sun now that it's finally stopped raining in LA, and just, take some time for myself. And then also in the morning, I have a morning routine where I sit and I journal. And I really try to stick to that each morning, especially if I know I have an early meeting. I then wake up earlier so I can still find that time, because that's really my me time. It's, 30 minutes just for me. I light a candle, I got my journal out, and then I can just, really script and get my head clear and start on a positive note.
I feel like that's so important because, as I said, it's very blurred. And in this hybrid work world, we can stay online all the time if we want to. And working for global organizations, obviously, I know one of my employees, she's on the West Coast, and a lot of our team is global. They're in India, they're all over the world. So for her, she was having to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be on calls. And I said to her, we have to work on your time management. If you're going to be online at 5 a.m., you need to be off by noon, 2 p.m. because burnout's real. And I cannot let you burn out.
Exactly. No, and that's an amazing management skill that you recognize that she needs to balance her time a little better so that she doesn't burn out and she is still able to then better serve the team. So yeah, well done, Christine.
Thank you. So just looking ahead, what's in store for you as you look at your 2023, both professionally and personally?
Yeah, professionally, what's exciting is we have a few big movies coming out this year. So excited to work on those and see those come to life, and from a consumer products perspective, hit shelves with all our various product, which is really exciting. And so that's something that I really enjoy because the work that I do is consumer facing. Being able to see it out in the world is always really fun. And then personally, I'm trying to sneak in a little travel this year now that the world has been opening up more and more. If I can get a few, miles, under my belt and see some places. I have a friend, we're planning a trip to Greece, and I've never been to Greece. So I'm thrilled to death to get that trip planned. So those are probably the two big things. And again, that's balance. It's getting those big projects out the door for work, but then having a vacation to look forward to and something fun in my future as well.
Any new movies you can give us a sneak peek on? I'm just kidding.
Well, no sneak peeks, but we know that the sequel, and I'm sure now that you have a little one, you're probably very familiar with Paw Patrol. The sequel to Paw Patrol, the Mighty movie, comes out this fall. So that's something that might be a perfect first movie for your son. And then we have another big hit, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Mutant Mayhem, comes out this summer. So thrilled to death to see those come to life. Those are going to be two really big titles for us, and hopefully all the fans all over the world will come out too for that.
Awesome. So one more final question for you as we're starting to wrap up. What factors do you think impact a woman's ability to lead others? Because I think as we're talking about women in leadership, and you and I and the roles that we're in, I think this one's really important for us to kind of discuss, figure out.
Yeah, I would say there are a couple of things. Visibility and accessibility, because if people, as we were saying not too long ago, if people don't know who you are or what you do, no one's going to think about you in a leadership role. So visibility is something that's so key. I would also say relationships, because as you progress in your career, or if you're looking to get to the C-suite or that corner office, those roles aren't necessarily posted on job boards or on LinkedIn or anything. People are poached for those. They're approached, they're headhunted, or, someone knows someone else who's interested, and it comes that way. So it's making sure that your network really solid, you have those really great relationships, and people know what you're looking for and what you're interested in. And then I would say training. That's really key. And I wish I saw it more, just, especially identifying people who want more and who want those leadership opportunities, giving them the opportunity to be trained, because there are certain skill sets that you may not always have, or you may not know are key to moving up into those higher ranks. And I think if there are some really solid training programs in place, either internally through your organization or externally that you can sign up for on your own, those really will help from a skill set perspective. I took a training prior to being promoted just on my own, and I learned so much about what it means to shift your mindset from being an individual contributor to overseeing a team of contributors, and what that means in terms of letting go of things that you may have loved to do or were comfortable doing, and being okay with someone else doing it, and being okay with the way they do it. Right? Because just because they do it differently doesn't mean it's wrong. And then figuring out, what does your responsibility look like now overseeing a larger team? So I would say visibility, accessibility, relationships, and training are probably those 4 key factors for women looking to move up in their career.
I love that. And I love the point you just made, because I think as I moved into a leadership role, that was definitely a hard part for me, because I had to, you almost feel like you have to relinquish control and let other people sink or swim on their own. And I think for me, that was the hard part, because I had a way that I did things. I had a way, we execute a lot of events, and I knew kind of, this is how a trade show should look, and these are the steps we have to take. But for me, it was, this is the team I've hired. I know they're capable of doing the job that I hired them to do. So let's let them do it, let them figure it out. And if they need me, they'll come to me. So I think for me, that was the big shift that I had to make, moving from individual contributor to manager.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Jonelle, anything else you want to share with the group or whoever's watching this?
No, this is great. And I'm glad we had this platform and this forum to share about just women in general. I think it's important that we support each other. Sometimes it can feel sort of competitive, but at the end of the day, there is room for all of us. And we should really look out for each other, raise each other up, lift as we climb, and just make sure that we're setting everyone else and ourselves up for success as well. So it's just important that we continue to have these dialogue and support other women in positions of power, especially those who want more out of their careers as well. So I'm just so thrilled that we had this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great pleasure of mine. And thank you to Brand Innovators and everyone who tuned into the session. I think, Sydney, we're passing it back over to you.
Yep, that's perfect. And thank you right back to you both. This was fantastic, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sydney.
Awesome. Bye there.
Bye.
Okay, amazing. So we are on to the next after that wonderful session. We are going to be having Avantika Saxena, the Director of Growth Marketing from Fresh Prep, joining us with her moderator, Eric Gaffey, the Agency Partner Manager from Liftoff. So they're going to be joining right about now.
Hey everybody.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Doing well on this very gloomy Thursday in New York City. If anyone is in this part of the country, barely got out of bed this morning. So I'm happy. This is the one exciting thing. And I'm happy to dive into it.
There we go. Happy Thursday to you both. And I will leave it to you both. So thank you guys for being here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Avantika, I'm really excited to share with everyone today, your story, your journey to your current position, background. It really is exciting and fascinating, and it's going to be a really engaging session. So before we get any further, I want to do a really quick background, 2 seconds on myself. Once again, Eric Gaffey, Agency Partner Manager at Liftoff. We're a mobile growth DSP that helps brands build their app user base. So think just performance marketing. All right, got that out of the way. Let's get into the fun stuff. So great to have you today, Avantika. Can you share a little bit on your journey and how you became a director of growth at Fresh Prep, and take it away?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, before I get into it, I mean, I really want to thank you for having me here. So yeah, regarding my journey, I mean, unlike most of the traditional marketers, I started as an engineering graduate decades back ago. And I always feel that that coding experience, which I really coded for like 4 years after my graduation with some cool tech companies like AMD and all. So, and I'm really proud of it. And I feel that has always given me an edge in learning marketing technology, in adapting to the tech, because in today's world, I mean, the marketing is a lot of tech. So, right, you have to adapt to it, you have to implement it, you have to get results out of it. So I always think that coding experience has given me an edge with that in adapting the technology, right? So regarding the marketing side of it, I have been working for over 10 years in marketing, with my career spanning over some of the big B2C brands like eBay, where I managed their social media ads for like 8 countries. And then I moved to Canada to work for Best Buy. So, and in my current role at Fresh Prep, I'm managing their all digital channels, primarily responsible for the growth and the new customer acquisition. So I manage search engine optimization, paid media, affiliate, partnerships, and influencers. So my role is mostly like a T-shaped digital marketer. So like overseeing lots of channels. And of course, I do have my few favorite ones. So that is like a T-shape. Yeah, but that's how about it.
Awesome. Yeah, you sound like you have a pretty busy day. So thank you for taking the time. We'll get into some of the more, I guess, business-oriented questions about what's your favorite channel, what are your predictions for 2023, telling us more about what Fresh Prep is. But I kind of want to start more on the personal front. Obviously, today is about women in marketing, and the journey that you just walked us through from being, starting off in coding and engineering, and then moving into your current role as the director of growth marketing for Fresh Prep. Kind of, what's the lens outside of that's almost like the resume overview. What's the personal side of it? How has it been as you've gone as a woman from India to your current role in Canada as the director of growth? I'd love to hear more on that.
Sure, I would love to share. Yeah, that's a good thing. So like I was like born in a very small city in India. So, and decades ago, and at that time, unfortunately, India was not as progressive as it is today. So like there was a lot of societal pressure and norms for girls there, like from like clothing to even how a girl should sit, talk, behave, right? And what are girls supposed to do and what they are not, right? So there was a lot of society pressure, stigma around it. So, but I'm lucky that I have a very supportive family, especially my grandparents, whom I call Nana ji and Nani ji, and my parents, right? So, especially my mom, they were like, there's nothing that I cannot do because I'm a girl, right? So they brought me up in a really very supportive environment. In fact, they always challenged me to do things which were not supposed to do being done by girls at that time. So be it like a professional goal. So they set up like, okay, you should be doing engineering. Why not? You should not be doing, right? So, and even to small things that makes up your character, like going out alone, traveling alone, especially in that city, which were not considered safe at that time for girls in our city. So like, they actually motivate me to bring out my whole personality there, right? So, and few things like glass ceiling, right? So glass ceiling, the social barrier, right, which prevents women from being promoted to top jobs in management. So I've seen that glass ceiling much before I started in the corporate world. So, and the one example is like, I was the only girl in my maths and the computers class. So I took maths and computers as majors in my high school. And I was the only girl in that school. I mean, I do not know why, but right? I mean, so like, how to behave or how to get well in an environment where you are the only girl in the room, right? I mean, so those kinds of things I have seen much before in the corporate ladder. But luckily, I have like two very strong mentors in my life. I mean, and they share like really great learnings around there. The one was basically around like a lean in for responsibilities. I'm glad that I learned it very early in my career, right? So like to lean in for responsibilities, to press ahead, to project confidence, like to sit at the table where all the decisions are being made, right? And basically, even like on the table, like physically lean in to make yourself heard, right? I mean, to make yourself, your presence like felt to others, right? I mean, so that is like very important learning that I had from one of my mentor in the life. Other one also I want to share, and this one is really important for me because this one is from my previous manager at Best Buy, and of course he was not Indian, and then he shared it with me so that it resonated with me so well. So he actually told me like, Avantika, be your own Durga. And Durga here is a female goddess in Hindu mythology, which is associated with lots of strength, power, and all those things, right? So he was like, you have to fight your own arguments, right? I mean, you have to fight your own battle. I mean, that means like on the table, right? So like be your own Durga kind of thing is something which like be a fearless leader, right? So yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure everyone is nodding along right now. This is why I was so excited to have today's conversation, because I mean, from being the only person in your math class, which on a personal note, I remember trying to run and sprint out of math class, and you're fighting and going and pushing your way in, which is so incredible and inspiring. And then, you know, I think those two kind of mantras, so to speak, you know, leaning into responsibilities and being a fearless leader are so important, you know, obviously, and particularly for women in marketing and in any career, you know, and in life just in general, to continue to, you know, make sure that your voice is heard and making sure that, you know, that wisdom, power, and knowledge that you know, that you all possess is being brought out to the forefront. Now, moving just a little bit away from maybe work and your journey, I think this is something that's, you know, or maybe not moving away from work, but this is something that's so important and a lot of times not talked about as often as it should be. The work-life balance, you know, between being, you shared with me that you're a mother, a wife, and you're a director of growth at marketing. How you do all that with every channel under the sun that you're already managing. So take us into maybe a day-to-day. How are you managing all this, and how is it helping you continue to be such a leader in the corporate world, as well as, you know, that balance in your personal side as well?
Yeah, this is such a question close to my heart, right? I mean, and I'll start it by quoting an article from HBR. It's a pretty 2017, if I'm right, article, so not very new, but yeah, it still holds true. So the article says like, if you can't find a spouse who supports your career, I mean, stay single. And that stands. That sounds good so much for like especially women, right? I mean, the article actually, you know, in fact, goes and even says like professionally ambitious women really only have two options, right, when it comes to their personal partners: a super supportive partner or no partner at all. So like that article like really went into the depth, but the point here is like, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a very supportive partner for me, right? So, and the one beautiful story around it is like when he asked for marriage for the thing, I mean, my only question to him was like, suppose, think of a scenario, because I'm an ambitious woman, I probably would be working throughout my life as much as I can. So like my only question to you is like, suppose there is a day when I come like really late evening and there are some guests at home, will you be able to prepare menu, dishes, do the cooking part and entertain the guests? And he was like, okay. I'm like, if you're willing to do like almost 50% of it, then only probably we can go for a marriage. And I'm lucky that he is doing 50%, almost 50%, or maybe even more at times, honestly. So doing the load sharing with me, from childcare to every other thing that we need at home. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I love to hear it. Okay. We've heard, the background and on the personal side, work-life balance, your two key leading mantras. Let's jump into a little bit into that execution. So as a woman in marketing, as a director of growth, let's ask a couple of business-focused questions. Let's start off with Fresh Prep. What does Fresh Prep bring to consumers? What are you guys bringing in the marketplace? You're a Canadian-based company, but obviously I want you guys, we're international here. We want to hear everything about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd love to share about Fresh Prep. So in general, at high level, Fresh Prep is a meal kit delivery service that provide customers with all the ingredients they need to make a tasty home-cooked meals, right? And the good thing is the ingredients are not only pre-measured, but also prepped. So making it like really super easy, super simple for customers to simply follow a few steps in the recipe guide and then turn it into a beautiful meal, right? So, but as in the meal kit industry, right, there are a few basic things that customers expect from a meal kit, right? So a few things are like customization, the Fresh Prep is really good at. It has lots of variety. It lets the customers choose all the recipes, go up and down as they want, pause and hold as they want, right? And of course, we do have lots of recipe variety that Fresh Prep, from vegetarian, low carb, dairy-free options, whatnot. And of course, it's convenient. But these, I think, are the basic qualities that are required in a meal kit. So what sets Fresh Prep apart? It is its sustainable packaging. Like Fresh Prep uses 100% recycled and cyclable packaging material. So they even have their own proprietary zero waste containers, which reduces waste even further. And you do not have those big carton boxes like other kits, right? It's really good. So Fresh Prep, so that is the best part about it, right? So its commitment to the planet is very close to our heart, right? And the another thing is like lots of community involvement. So like in whichever provinces we operate, we do work closely with our local vendors in those provinces. And we ensure that those ingredients are like really sourced from local farmers and they are like really high quality. So like we are proud to be Canada's most sustainable meal kit. That sets us really apart, right? But other than that, another thing that, because we are talking about women in marketing here, right? So, we are proud to say that more than 50% of our employees identify as women. And even in our leadership team, right, we have more than 50% of women there. So, which is a great stats to celebrate.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear. And thank you for the background there. As Canada's most sustainable meal kit service, that probably makes your job a bit easier in terms of growth. But what else are you your day-to-day, where are you focusing your energies as we enter 2023, maybe getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of growing Fresh Prep? Like where's your day-to-day? What are you excited about? It's a pretty general question, but we'll start there. We can have some finer points too.
For sure, yeah. As a marketer and a fresh prepper, 2023 will be very different for us, right? We have to pivot accordingly how the tech industry is changing, new platforms are coming up, existing platforms are maturing and saturating, right? So industry is evolving at a much faster rate, and that is where we need to learn and adapt, right? The data privacy concerns, the data security concerns, right? Not able to let us target as efficient as we wanted to, right? But other than that, right, our top priority for Fresh Prep is to continue building the Fresh Prep's brand and the reputation, right? So we are a fast growing company. We are entering new provinces every year. So that is where we have to tackle like two sorts of market. Like in one province, we are at a quite mature stage, which doesn't need lots of branding effort, but it needs lots of performance marketing, right? But at the same time, we are entering into a new province. So that we have to look at as a new market, right? So lots of brand building efforts, focusing on our messaging, which is around sustainability, convenience, and quality, around those themes, right? So yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to go a little bit off the cuff here. You mentioned, pushing more branding efforts in well-established, in new provinces, and then vice versa. How is it? Can you share kind of two channels or two growth strategies that you're using, one for branding and one for performance? Kind of like what's hot, and so to speak, for you right now and really moving the needle in both definitions or both strategies of marketing?
Oh yeah, for sure. So like when we are in a growth, mature market, right, where we do not need as much as brand, then of course, we really work as a true performance marketer. So everything is being counted against our core KPIs, right? Which is, of course, customer acquisition rate, customer acquisition cost, right? And all those things. So, and when we talk about those, we know which are those channels are, right? I mean, we have like tons of channels in our portfolio, right? But we know like few channels like paid media, paid search, they are good in the performance marketing, right? Especially paid search, right? I mean, if people know about you and you are doing some branded search components there, right? So because you have already a brand built in the market, right? But in terms of like growing markets, right, where we need some platforms to reach out to wider audiences, and there we go like really wide. I mean, from digital channels like YouTube to non-traditional medias like billboards and all, right? I mean, even to direct mailers and all, right? I mean, because we want to increase our reach, and it's not easy to create customer acquisition cost because you are creating and putting lots of efforts in brand awareness and brand building there, right?
Gotcha. Okay, we're going to stay on channels for just a second. Which would, and this is a question I've asked in previous during previous moderations. Is that moderator? Previous times moderator. Never mind. Anyway, what's one channel that you just can't see yourself living without, or living without it? Yeah, in 2023. And has that changed from last year? So is there any difference between what you can't live without between 22 and 23, or where does that sit?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because like as a full like T-shaped marketer, I really want all my channels on the portfolio, right? I mean, because each channel has its own unique characteristics, unique sets of target audiences, right? I mean, which are more active on those. I mean, the one who uses more Facebook might not be using more TikTok, right? I mean, because the audience persona is different, the age group is different, right? So it's really difficult to pick the best one there. But I mean, what has changed from 2022 to 23 is, of course, I mean, we all know with lots of changes rolling out in this data privacy, iOS, there are few channels that are not working as great as they should be, right? I mean, but we are working towards making all those technology like API integrations and all to make sure like we are able to leverage those platforms with equal thing. But having said that, I mean, if I have to really pick one, it depends lots on marketing campaign, the objectives, right? And all those things. But I think being a performance marketer, paid search is something because which someone cannot take off the budgets because it's scalable and sustainable, right? I mean,
of course. Awesome. Okay, so we've talked about your personal journey. We moved into a bit of fresh prep. We talked some work. I want to bring it back to a bit more focused on you as a woman in marketing. So, can you share with us a major a pivotal learning moment in your career? It could be centered around being a woman in marketing. You just centered around just learning and growing and finding a love for, you know, what we're all doing or what we all do on a day-to-day basis, which is marketing. But can you share a little bit more on, you know, with us on this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So like, I mean, the one learning as a woman marketer, I think I had in my career is I need to better learn quicker how to do networking, right? Because as the earlier speaker also said, right? I mean, networking is so important. And probably as a woman, or maybe probably as an Indian woman, I was not so good at it. And probably I'm not good at it yet too, right? So, but that is one thing which helps a lot, right? You really need to know who are the right decision makers and how to kick off conversations with them and how to kick off the networking with those people, right? And I'm very reluctant to go into the networking events yet, but I'm working on it. So, right. So I think networking is something which each woman should spend some dedicated time on it, because it pays in the long run, right? It pays to get your visibility into the market, right? And being recognized as a strong leader.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely need to work on that as well for myself. So thank you for sharing. All right, as we get close to wrapping up here, we talked a lot about 2023. Do you have a big prediction for this year?
Yeah, so for 2023, I mean, there are few things that will extend from 2022. I mean, with all those cookies, things going away and lots more changes coming up, right? I mean, the main challenge will be for organizations will be to figure out how to gather and leverage our first party data more than ever, right? I mean, but that's a trend that will be extending from 2022, right? I mean, we all are working on it, so it will probably get more accelerated there. Another thing that I think will be more around marketing automation, right? I mean, with the economy slowing down, I mean, we need more automated workflows that can take care and work with whole in itself and still can deliver a better digital experience. I mean, as e-commerce is expanding, there's hardly any chance that our digital experience should not be the best, right? I mean, no user will excuse us for a poor digital experience, which is not good. So digital experience will be the most priority for each companies as well, right? Another thing, like coming back to the economy things, right? I mean, I think another thing that will happen is like we need to focus not just on growth, but we just need to focus more on a sustainable and a scalable growth. So we don't just want to acquire customers, right? But we want to acquire more profitable customers, the customers with higher lifetime values, the customers which give us more margins, right? I mean, so it's not just about like keep expanding, but like it's bring a growth that is more sustained. Right.
Fantastic. First party data is everyone's true North Star and continuing to grow and sustainable and, thinking also of not only obviously sustainability, climate, and keeping those things top of mind for us as we enter the new year. Okay, well, as we get close to wrapping up here, I want to ask you this parting question. Can you share with us some of the wisdom and kind of your last final talking points of being a woman in marketing? What have you learned, and what would be your recommendations if you have 1, 2, maybe 3 points to those who are listening and either at the beginning of their career, middle of the career, end of their career? What are some of the wisdom that you've learned over your career that you'd like to impart upon us?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, the one theme I'll pick up is from the last Women's Day theme, right? Which was like break the bias, right? So, but I mean, no matter how much we say we are unbiased, there are some conscious and unconscious bias sitting with most of us, right? So, and the most difficult part is we do not acknowledge those biases. So it's important for us that we uncover those biases, acknowledge them, and then work towards them, right? I mean, and it can be both for men and women, right? I mean, women may have their own biases, right? I just heard some interviews there when in an interview, like the CEO said, like most of the women they interview, they always says like, I contributed, rather than men who likes to take the ownership of that success, like as if they have built the whole brand, right? But women are more towards like, okay, I contributed, but what exactly you want to, achieve in the world, right? I mean, so the most important thing is working towards identifying, acknowledging, and breaking those biases for a more equal world, right? The another wisdom for me is also around like, and this is again from my mentor one, right? The lead-in one, right? So it's important that you ask for things, right? You ask for responsibilities, you ask for salary negotiations, you ask for that promotion, right? I mean, I think we always under ask, maybe men and women both, but probably women more, right? They do under ask. So like, and there are times, right? I mean, after coming into a people's manager role, like I realized that if I have two people working for me and there's one person who is asking, right? I mean, it seems like he is ready for it. He or she is ready for it, right? So
certainly. Well,
but what worse can happen? You will not get that promotion. You will not get that salary hike. Nothing worse can happen than that. But at least ask.
I just did my my PRP, I think, on Tuesday, so I might go and edit it and put a couple of questions, ask for some more.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we have for the viewers today. Avantika, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing with us the wisdom. I mean, it's been incredible getting to know you over this past week. And getting to really share the webcam, so to speak. No stage today, but the webcam with you. So it's been a pleasure and an honor. So thank you very much. And Sydney, I think that's all we got for today.
Great. Thank you so much, Avantika, Eric. Thank you guys for being here. And this was such a wonderful session. So we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you both. Yeah. You have been great. Amazing, Eric.
Bye, everyone.
Fantastic. Bye now. All right. So that is going to be the end of our day. So thank you, everyone, for joining us and for tuning in. Big shout out to all of our speakers and our audience and our sponsors, because we couldn't be here without everyone involved. So that's that. Be sure to check out the Brand Innovators website to learn about our next event and many others to come. So thank you and have a good day.